Hey everyone, thanks for being here. We have Brendan, aka Logical Consistency, here today with us. So thank you for coming on. I'm very excited. We're going to be, as per usual, reacting to outreach videos, one of his, one of mine. And yeah, hi, animals are here with us, not for us. So
Hello.
Brendan, could you introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Yeah. My name is Brandon. My channel name is Logical Consistency on YouTube and Instagram. Like Lucy, I do vegan outreach, vegan activism. So yeah, I'm here to get critiqued, to have some fun, all of that.
Mhm. Yeah. And of course, we're going to be nitpicking. This is the point of these live streams. But of course, remembering that don't get too overwhelmed, especially if you're starting activism or if you're still like, if you're even experienced and you watch and you're like, oh my God, like, does that mean that, I shouldn't do it? Kind of feel like there's this feeling of like, oh, am I really making it worse for the animals sometimes? Because you look back at your outreach, you're like, oh my God. um, but really, this is very important to remember that it's never going to be perfect, and this is just to try to improve ourselves, and that sometimes takes a while to practice and to implement new things. So just like keep that in mind. Don't let it scare you.
Yeah, almost every interaction I have, after it, I realize I should have said something different or could have went a different direction. So, you try your best. I think just being there and trying to talk to people about something that they could care less about on a daily basis, I think is important. But yeah, also recognizing that you are going to mess up. Like you're not going to, you're going to make mistakes for sure.
Yeah, and it's a good sign actually if you have found something you could improve, because that means you're paying attention. High lines though. Okay, so I guess we could start by doing a coin toss. This. So, what do you want? Tails or heads?
I'll go with tails never fails. Let's go.
All right. There we go. I think like people have been getting very lucky with those.
Really? Okay.
They always call tails and they always get it.
Look, tails never fails. It's the rhyme. I
Yeah.
learned it as a kid, so I always pick tails.
All right. So, are you able to present your screen, or do you want me to present it?
Just to make it easy. I mean, if you don't mind presenting, just to make it easier.
All right. Yeah. So, which video are we talking about?
Let me think here. Hold on. I mean, I don't mind just doing the most recent one because I have like a 45-minute one, but that might be much. I think the most recent one, I think there are things I could have done better, but I'm pretty happy with it too. So it's kind of a mix. So did the vegan, hold on.
Can you see my screen?
No,
you can't see it. Never mind. Hold on, I thought I was presenting it, but yes, there we go.
That one. Yeah, did the vegan change your mind? Yeah. I think that's fine.
Cool.
Saving Moses is here to save babies and toddlers where the need is most urgent and the care is least available.
All right. So, okay, let me rearrange the screen a little bit. There we go. Let's go.
I think it is an intelligence thing. I think that's what it comes.
By the way, let us know in the chat if the sound is good, because I always have a hard time telling from my side.
Yes.
Comes down to for me. And then when you make an example of a human being who is of less intelligence like that, I think that we kind of just draw a gray line for understanding that though they don't have the same intelligence as somebody else, they are still a human being. So
then it's not intelligence, it's species.
It's species, yeah.
Sure, so, but don't you find it convenient? Like, don't you think that's a little convenient where you go, oh yeah, I just draw the line in my own group? Like, don't you find it a little convenient how like, okay, everyone besides my own group, we can slit their throats, we could put them in sandwiches, we could wear their skin on our back. Anyone besides the group that I just so happen to be born into.
All right, so I already have some critiques, by the way.
All right, go for it.
So I think we have very different, not really very different, but some different ways of like the styles of outreach, basically. I think you're more of a debate style a little bit. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I have been trying to, so when I first started doing outreach, I was very like debate oriented, to where essentially I expected people to have a position, and then I'd want to try and persuade them or try and change their position. But more recently, and you'll kind of see in that video, but also other videos, I'm more focused on questions, more focused on kind of helping them form a position versus expecting them to defend something. Because most people, they've never thought about this before. They've never, like, I think expecting people to be on the same level of understanding and education as you just for the opposing side is a mistake. And that's something that I've kind of grown out of a little bit. But yeah, it's still going to be pretty like debate heavy.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I can see that. Yeah, I feel a similar way as well. Okay, so the reason why I kind of feel like I was always kind of trying to make it about like the not to make it about the report, but like report has always been a huge part of my activism, because like there was talk already when I started doing outreach. I was following Debug Your Brain, for example, who is very much focused on that to make sure that the defense levels are lower and stuff like this. And it doesn't mean that it works, that it doesn't turn into debate, but that's what I mean. I'm trying. But apart from that, like I feel like now, because like the book that I've been completely obsessing about in the live streams, but there's a reason for it. Okay, you know How Minds Change? I don't know if you've heard of that book. It's
I haven't read it. No.
I recommend it. It's about persuasion. It's the studies done on persuasion outside of the vegan movement, of course. Unfortunately, but it's like the psychology of persuasion, and in the book they talk a lot about how like people, I mean, it depends on the context, because for example, if you have a debate for example, like about a certain policy in a town hall or something like this, it can be very, very efficient. Or like if you're scientists, things like that, people who have already very much like the values of like intellectual honesty, things like that. And like also like they will be kind of chastised out of the community if they are not rigorous with their logic or the way they conduct their studies, things like that. Okay, so this is a different context, but I'm talking about like
everyday people.
Exactly, everyday people. And in the book, they talk about how it's very important to really not lead with like kind of facts and stuff like this, and for them to not see you as other as much as possible. Of course, they will, because we're vegan and we're part of veganism. But you know, like trying to lower that and to really try to take their own experiences of like how they have felt, for example, in their lives, victimized or overpowered, things like that, and also how they have witnessed the individuality of other animals, basically like emotional felt experiences, to kind of like try to make them realize the vegan thing, basically. That's easier said than done, but of course I'm not saying like just like focusing on their feelings and things like that, but apparently it's for everyday people it tends to be how they change their minds, basically, unfortunately, because that would be so much easier to me, at least if it was through just thought, because obviously but that's why I'm trying to not, it often turns into a debate for me, because people get so defensive, but I try to kind of like go into have you ever felt, you know, like in their position, you know, kind of like AV does that with are you in their position?
Yeah, I think the problem is you like, especially in this video, right? You'll see that I try and like I start out asking questions. So I'll start out trying to appeal to their emotional experiences with their dog, right? Or I start off with trying to get them to connect with what I'm trying to advocate for. But the problem is people, even if they've never like for example, if somebody came to me and told me about something I've never heard about, right? I would go, oh, I've never heard about that. I don't really have a position, or I can't really, I can't really say one way or another. I'm open, explain it, whatever. Right. But I think people, when they find that they're uneducated, it's almost like they'll double down on a position, which ends up turning it into a debate, which is it ends up being very one-sided, and it ends up like we end up almost as enemies a lot of times. Not like I said, recently I'm trying to a softer approach, but yeah, I'm really bad at small talk. I'm very bad at rapport. Even in
I'm
like,
not good at it too. I feel like it's just very hard when you're doing vegan outreach because you're so. I mean, let's face it. Most of us really hate their guts and shit like that, and we're very angry because it's horrific what they're saying and shit. But yes, I feel that.
yeah. So, and that's the thing is like, even outside like outreaches, especially where I just want to get to I want to like talk about the things I'm standing outside waiting to talk about, so that's also hard. But just in like my personal life, my actual job, like I'm very bad. Like I'm more of a fixer, more of like I'm more work oriented. Like I just want to do the thing that I'm supposed to do. I don't need to small talk. I don't need to, have a good relationship with you to do the right thing or to fix things. So, but most people don't operate that way, right? Most people, if they feel connected to somebody, they're more likely to change, which is infuriating, but it is what it is. I don't know.
Like, you mean I have to be connected to the terrorists for them to stop?
Right.
That's why I'm literally the next book club. I mean, we're reading a book, but after this book that we're reading in the book club, it's going to be Never Split the Difference, which is a book about hostage negotiation. And it's going to be very helpful because this is exactly what we're doing.
Right.
I mean, it is. It's literally like I have to connect to this crazy, selfish person so that this stop. And
yeah, we're almost like negotiating with terrorists. Like we're trying to figure out how. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. But yeah,
that's why I think it can something that helps me personally because I struggle with that as well because I'm so angry. But whatever. Something that helps me is kind of like this is the work. Like the report is the work. Like this is like I'm doing that for the animals. It's not so the person feels better, whatever, because it's really not. But
right.
It's like it's all about like because you are someone, for example, you as a personality more work oriented and you really want to just get it done kind of thing, it can be helpful to reframe the situation of like this is the work I'm getting done,
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's a task. Yeah. Someone said something I thought was important. Yes, it doesn't matter what the oppressor wants, they have no right to exploit animals, period. I think this is accurate. But like the only thing that I think when people sometimes see that the kind of softer approaches to outreach in terms of tone, not messaging, of course, they kind of like they have this big concern that's very, very valid of like us trying to just kind of make friends with them and make the people
right, or like we're catering to the non-vegan or something. Yeah.
But really, it's really just about the efficiency. I mean, not necessarily all activists, but I mean, for me in particular, sometimes I might be overcompensating and making it a little bit too much. And it's very hard because when I get nervous in outreach, I tend to really like just over laugh and over smile. That's how I deal with it, and that has to change. But apart from that, like I understand it's just about the efficiency, really,
But that's the thing is like at the end of the day, what do you want to do, right? Because for me, I could go outside and I could scream, "You should be vegan. You should be vegan." Like I can be very hard and just tell people what they should be doing. Do you want to do that, or do you actually want to change people's minds, right? Because to try and change people's minds, you have to understand like we're in the minority, right? What we do to animals is perfectly legal. There's nothing stopping them legally. There's nothing stopping them morally in their eyes, right? Based on their values. So they say they have no issue with what happens to animals, right? So the only way to get people to change is to strategically get them to put pieces together that they didn't think were there, right? You're trying to get them to connect, whether it's emotionally, whether it's logically, with what they currently value and what you want them to value or what you think they should be valuing. You're trying to put them together. And it's very hard to do that without going off of where they are, right? You can't really do that just by preaching at them, right? Preaching doesn't really work. You have to like get them to connect the pieces themselves based on, their own way of thinking. So it's really hard.
Yes. The more I learn about outreach, the more I feel like I'm so lost. Like I'm just like I don't know what I'm doing at all. But that's a good sign. That means that you're really paying attention again because this is actually very confusing and very hard. But it is always comforting to hear other activists that are feeling the same way.
Yeah. No, it's like and I'm always like, it's hard not to rethink everything. Like because like I've switched, like I went through like 5 different approaches. Not all of them are on video, but I've switched through like so many different ways of trying to do it, and it's like a coin toss every time, and it's tough. But that's why I like, for my own mental health, it's a serious thing, but I try not to take it too seriously, because at the end of the day, I'm out there, I'm doing it, and I want to be better and to get better. But if I can't take like how they react or what they do that seriously, because you just got to like keep it going, you know?
And you're not in charge. Like you cannot, you don't have the power to change them. You just don't. And we kind of like are on this fine line of like where we want to influence to the maximum. And then we try to control, because this is what we want really, but we can't really do it, and we forget. And I wanted to say something as well. Never mind. I don't remember. I might remember later. But
Okay. Good.
Talking about how you can make it into a joke of how many chickens you've eaten in your entire life.
What's the joke?
Well, that's what we were trying to figure out. Like,
okay.
Well, the joke is, it's a joke I'm trying to write, is that I'd probably be grossed out by the number of chickens I've eaten.
It's a lot, probably. Yeah.
But probably pretty impressed.
I remember what I wanted to say. It's actually kind of important. Also, remembering that exposure itself in psychology, when it comes to persuasion, is something really important. So just even if you kind of feel like you kind of messed up and you didn't do a good job and the report was crap and things like that, at least they had exposure to the vegan idea and stuff, you know? So that really is something to remember, because
100%. I agree.
Number of cows that
he eats a lot of cock.
Okay.
So do you guys want to know?
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing. People, like, I can't tell you the amount of people that their go-to is to make a joke, whether in passing or when they first come up. Yeah, because they're uncomfortable, right? And I do the same thing. Like when I'm uncomfortable, or like my go-to is humor, right? I like to cope with uncomfortable things with, via humor. And so yeah, and you'll see, like, as the conversation goes on, the guy who made the joke about eating so many chickens, he's uncomfortable. Like he knows that I'm he's wrong, or what I'm saying is the right thing. So yeah, it's just there's so many people pass by and are like, oh, I can't, steak is too good. Like they always make it a joke. But then when you actually try and press them on it, they get very uncomfortable, and they don't really have anything else to say besides a joke, So that's interesting.
That's a good sign, I guess, because discomfort shows awareness, self-awareness in some sense.
Yeah, no, usually the ones who start off with a joke, they usually end up being they kind of understand it at the end. It's really the people who are very serious anti-vegan that are much harder to reach. So like, you can't really take the jokes personally, I guess is my point, is, just take the joke, keep the conversation going, and they'll usually, open up, because that's their defense, kind of,
I don't really have that much. When they do a joke, like when they make a joke, to me, when it gets to that point is when they really like got pissed off.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's also the culture where you are versus where I am.
Could be. Yeah. Massachusetts is I don't know where the difference, but Massachusetts is a very cold, hard state. It's like they're very cold in Massachusetts. So there's a lot of dark humor, and there's a lot of like coping like that.
I think, that might be a geographical thing. I'm in Montana, so I don't know really, but
okay, interesting.
Okay. My name is Brandon. First of all, you guys want to start by introducing yourself?
I'm Michael.
Lewis.
All right, Michael Lewis. All right.
Cooking for one doesn't make sense. If you want to eat better without wasting hours cleaning and prepping.
Handshakes, nice. All right. So, first off, would you guys say you're against animal abuse?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Okay. So, can you give me an example of when animal abuse would be moral or would be acceptable by your values?
If they're not listening.
Okay. So if an animal isn't listening to what you want it to do, you think you could just slap it or burn it, or
You don't slap
Okay, I have a first thing.
Mhm.
There's two things. Like, I'm never really sure. But, like, I'm gonna like wait on the abuse thing to see what you do with it, because
Mhm.
sometimes I think it's shaky, because like it can be risky, but I think sometimes you can make it not be a problem, kind of thing.
Yeah, just to
Um,
explain a little bit as to what
Mhm.
my strategy was. So I usually, well, I guess lately I've been starting with some kind of baseline to where we can find common ground, right? So my goal isn't to talk about how animal abuse is bad and that's it, right? But my goal is to, if I can establish, okay, you are against what is commonly known as animal abuse, right? Beating individuals, I don't know, maybe force feeding individuals, torturing, animals, right? So if we're on the same page there, from there, once I get them to acknowledge that they are against animal abuse, which is basically them saying that animals have some moral value in their eyes, right? They deserve some level of moral consideration. So once I get that concession, which again, in this example, they're joking. They're more jokes, which it kind of is throwing it off a little bit, because most people say, yeah, of course I'm against animal abuse, right? That's like the sane thing to say. But yeah, once I get that concession, from there, I try and get them to understand why, or I try and ask them why they're against that abuse, right? Because it's not so much being against abuse doesn't really mean anything. It's why they're against the abuse.
Mhm.
And if they say, oh, I'm against the abuse because they feel pain, or I feel bad, or something that tells me, that gives me insight as to why they consider animals morally, from there, I can extend that to all animal exploitation, to not just abuse, but to using them for food, clothing, entertainment, whatever. So that's kind of the angle I go. But he kind of threw it off with his sarcasm, but whatever.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's I think the right way to do it, for sure. There's just like I used to use actually reverse psychology. It's okay to use to abuse other like animals, and I don't think I did it in the right way and stuff. But like I think this is definitely a great way to do it. And also like the other thing, I think it's harder for you because of the fact that you're a native English speaker, and I think it's more in your brain like that. But like saying it when it
Yeah,
comes
the
to
id.
other
Yeah,
animals.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it even
yeah, yeah.
happens to me, and I'm not even like a native English speaker, so I can't even imagine. But yeah.
Yeah, that's I really try, like, when like consciously to avoid using that language, but it, like in the moment with like nerves and everything, I just default to what what I'm used to. But yeah, I really try and avoid that. So yeah, that's a big one.
You got to teach it.
Sure, but that's not necessarily abuse unless you're causing harm or. I mean, I think owning animals is restricting their rights either way, but.
I hear what you're saying. So if you're really abusing it, if you're really just like.
He's talking about getting after it.
Yeah, you like kick a dog, that's fucked up.
Sure, okay, so we agree animal abuse is fucked up, correct? It's wrong. Okay. So, do you guys have any companion animals like dogs, cats?
I have a couple pets.
I have 2 cats.
2 cats. Okay. Would you say you love your animals?
Okay, this might not be anything, but I feel like it. I'm wondering if having like when you have a sign that you keep the whole conversation, I think it kind of maybe subconsciously adds a little barrier in terms of like, oh look, I'm the vegan kind of thing, kind of reminding them that you're the vegan activist instead of just kind of person. I wonder if you
Interesting.
just took it off.
If I just took it off, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I thought about like I did activism on Halloween, and I had a costume where I couldn't have the sign on. So and people still came up. So I wonder, like, I could just hang it somewhere, like next to me. Like, I don't even have to wear it necessarily, because I don't move around. I usually stay in one spot. So just like hanging it on the tripod maybe, or something where people can still see it. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I'm used to, like, it's just easier to just have it hang on me the whole time. But yeah, maybe taking it off or trying a different approach, that might do something.
Yeah, I think it's an unnecessary kind of like, what if that's the thing? Because if you keep talking to someone and there's like, it's kind of also distracting a little bit. I think it just reminds you of like the fact that they're other a little bit, like like a yeah.
Right, like I'm the guy with the sign. Yeah.
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 I love one of them and I hate the other.
Or sorry.
But you don't hate them enough to kill them, right?
I love one of them and I hate the other.
But you don't hate them enough to kill them, right? You still take care of them and.
I live with it and I still clean up its shit. So I obviously love it.
Okay. And do you guys
Yeah,
recognize,
this one
like, any
is
animals that you're
the
around?
flow at the start is kind of awkward because they keep making jokes. Like their go-to is to not take anything seriously. Like, you know, the one guy's talking about how it's okay to slap animals to teach them, and the other guy's saying how he loves one of them but hates the other one. And like the flow is a little off because they're actually making more jokes than the average person, which is a little tough. But yeah, I'm just trying to get through the jokes so we could actually get to the conversation.
It's kind of like ignoring them and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's the bet. Like if someone just keeps making jokes, don't humor it. I would just say, like, just keep asking questions. Like, even if it's like, okay, it's a little awkward, just ask another question or try and, you know, keep pushing the point.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize that they have their own personalities, right? They have their likes, their dislikes. They can feel pain. They can feel joy, right?
They know what's going on.
They know what's going on.
Yes.
That's good.
And that's called being sentient. So it's essentially like them being an individual, right? Beyond just like a table or a carrot, for example. So
You don't think carrots
This.
Yeah.
No!
Yeah.
I was going to
I
say-
really, dude, I really have to stop because I always expect people to be like, oh yeah, carrots, tables, those are like things, right? But then like I just got to take carrot out of it. I should have just left it a table, but no, I had to put in carrot just so people like. I thought if I put in carrot, it would avoid me having to say that plants aren't sentient later on. But no, he still had to like grab onto that.
But that's insane. But whatever. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what happens.
have feelings?
No. Do you think carrots have feelings?
Sometimes.
Like when?
Well, I grow plants and like they're growing. Like
They
just
are
grew
growing.
a bunch of squash.
But
And
do
it's
they
like,
have like brains, central nervous systems, any indication that they are like an individual experiencing the world subjectively? Beyond just responding to stimulus?
those were a lot of big words.
No.
No.
I'm
Okay.
going to answer for it.
All right, thank you. So pretty much what you see in your companion animals, almost all animals have that, right? Whether it be other mammals like cows, chickens, pigs, cows, pigs, dogs, cats, whether it be birds like chickens, like crows, like hawks, whatever, most fish, right? So all other animals or most other animals share that characteristic of sentience. So if I'm assuming you would never want to abuse or kill or harm your animals in any way, especially if it's not necessary. So what's stopping you from kind of extending the moral value you?
Okay, so I try actually because I've had people mainly in the comments, but I've had that actually in outreach coming up, like people bringing up pesticides if I say killing, and I don't want them to think veganism is about killing because it's, you know, like I know what you mean because we're exploiting them for their flesh and stuff, but I just feel like, yeah, because if you kind of make them feel like it's about killing, they'll be like, well, what about pesticides? And that would be correct to bring up, right? And we're not saying we don't want pesticides to like be changed or something, whatever, but it's just that, you know, like it's not the exploitation kind of thing. So a vegan can have food that's like, you know, grown with pesticides kind of thing. Because it's, you know, like we've had a debate with someone like a while back and we talked about that, but you know, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I think that's why I never I mean I tend to really try not to bring up the killing thing, or I say exploiting for their flesh, which I think is kind of vivid as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think the problem I have is or the rebuttal I'd have to the pesticides thing is like, ideally, like I would also want the pesticide thing to stop. Like I in no way, like if there's a clear alternative, I would never sign off on using pesticides over not. And if they're going to bring up pesticides, then we could talk about building roads. We could talk about building homes. We could talk about like all of these other actions, like the impact of humans, like trying to live on the planet negatively impacts animals, right? Not just for food. So like, I always love like when I bring up, you know, how what we do to animals is unjustified. And then people bring up, well, we got to kill animals for crops, right? They only focus, because most people think it's a diet, right? So they only focus on the food portion of human impact, but they never want to talk about building homes, building roads, like all of these other things that probably impact animals just as much, if not worse, depending. So what I always talk about, like, that I would say like the crop death thing is in like a whole separate category, right? It's in the same category as our impact of building roads, building homes, all these things. None of that justifies intentionally, enslaving, breeding, killing. Like, yes, do animals get killed in the process of us growing crops, building homes, stuff like that? Yes. But is that like premeditated, intentional, like killing, like murder? I would say no. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think without that explanation or without that comparison, I think killing can be kind of, it'll just trigger that, like, well, what about crops? What about, like, so I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think, obviously I agree with like everything you said. Like it's just that, I think most vegans agree that we would want like the harm that's not like related to veganism, like, crop deaths and stuff to be diminished, of course. But I think it's important that we explain to people that it's two different issues kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%.
For example, like if there's like, if there's slavery, like slavery of humans versus accidents, when they get, like we it's important that human rights are, it's kind of like, if you like you have to differentiate so that people can actually not use one as
like somebody advocating for the end of slavery is not the same as somebody advocating for people dying due to environmental destruction or something like that. It's a totally separate thing. I agree.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
To your animals to just all animals.
Well, there's an obvious food
Extending the moral value you give to your animals to just all animals.
Well, there's an obvious food chain when it comes to
really quick, I just want to add something here. Obviously we know that, like, as vegans, we know that dogs, cats, typical companion animals, they are still exploited, right? We're still against breeding animals into existence. We're still against, pets, traditional pets being eaten, obviously, and, abused, enslaved. But I think from his point of view, right, from his perspective, I know as someone who, like, I've talked to a lot of, I'm sure we all know pet owners or companion animal owners, but from his point of view, he really does love his animal, right? He really does value his animal as an individual, separate from the animals he eats or the animals he wears or, the animals at the zoo, right? So in that regard, obviously, him owning animals, I don't think he like truly values, truly like respects or provides like the moral value he should to other animals. But I'm just trying to kind of get him to understand that how he feels about his companion animal, right? How he wouldn't want anything bad to happen to them, how he wouldn't want to slit their throat, how he wouldn't want to, eat their flesh. I'm just trying to understand why he doesn't feel that way about other animals. So that's kind of what I was doing there.
I get that. I do the same thing, like bringing out their individuality kind of thing. Yeah. Yep. And yeah.
That's right. So,
can you elaborate a little bit?
Obviously, the human brain functions at a higher rate than like.
Every time they say that, I'm like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?"
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're not demonstrating it very well right now.
Yeah, the guy literally said, "Well, that's a lot of big words. Like, are you sure you're operating at a higher level?"
Yeah, if you were truly at a higher level, maybe you wouldn't like use that as an excuse to do this to them, but
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Let's say a chicken, because chickens did not build what's all around. Chickens did not build this microphone in your hand like you have in front of me. So the emotional sentience that a chicken has versus a human, maybe
pause it really quick. One thing to keep in mind, I find that people the animal that they want to eat the most or they want to exploit the most is the animal that they'll use as like the lower level of intelligence. So like people who really like steak will talk about how stupid cows are. This guy eats a lot of chicken, as he mentioned in the beginning. So he'll pick a chicken to talk about how stupid chickens are. So like there's no consistency, right? Because he might recognize, oh, cow, oh yeah, I don't really eat cows and pigs that much, or I don't really exploit cows and pigs that much. So I'll give that up. You know, like it's almost like people will like emotionally hang on to the thing that they enjoy the most, or the animal that they enjoy enslaving the most in their life. You know what I mean? It's just a little thing I've noticed is that they never talk about it from a neutral perspective. They always talk about it from the piece of flesh that they love to eat the most, which is interesting. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, enough to say that it's not as strong, but I mean, couldn't you say that like though they are sentient, it's not at the same level that like a human or like a dog is? When dogs show emotion, they're companions. I mean, if you can break a dog or a horse, right? Can you break a chicken or a fish in that same way?
Well, so first off, I think we have to clarify the term sentience and intelligence, right? So obviously we are more intelligent than most animals in most ways, right? But just because like there within humans, there's also a spectrum of intelligence, right? I may be more intelligent than you, or you might be more intelligent than him, or he might be more intelligent than someone.
I don't think that was a good move.
Yeah. I realized as I was doing it that I am essentially like level it. Like I literally put them in a ranking of intelligence, which I honestly do think is accurate, but I understand it's going to put a bigger divide. But yeah, I do realize that I did that, and I said, oh man, I probably shouldn't have worded it that way, but it's funny looking back at it. But yeah, I shouldn't have. Don't do that. Don't rank people on it based on intelligence, like in a way that's very obvious, like I did. That's really bad.
Example of like hindsight is 2020.
Yeah. Well, it just at the moment, that's what made the most sense. Like my brain went, oh, okay, me, him, and then I literally said, you might be smarter than somebody mentally challenged. I literally rank them like very obviously, and that's bad. Yeah, don't do that.
Someone who's mentally challenged, or they might be more intelligent than a newborn baby, right? So there's spectrums of intelligence. But do you think that should give anyone the right to abuse or harm or take the rights away from another person just because they have a higher capacity to think?
What a subtle diss, but not subtle at all.
Yeah. But the thing is, they seem totally unfazed by it. Like I really do think that guy on the right, if you notice, I kind of stop even focusing on him, the guy on the right, because he's like, not only does he's not like not getting it as much as the other guy, but he's like not getting, like I don't think he's registering what I'm even saying, because he seemed totally unfazed by what I just did. So, and that's another good tip is like, if there's 3 people and only one of them is actually like engaging with what you're saying, focus on the one that's engaging. Like focus on the one that you have a greater chance of actually reaching, because the other ones are just like, if you give them that attention, they might actually disrupt the whole thing and take away from the person that's actually interested. That's at least what I found.
Yeah, and besides, there's some peer pressure. So if one is like, they're all listening, kind of, even if not super like paying attention, but like it's still like some type of peer pressure that if they're not like jumping in, they tend, I think, to. I feel like there might be like some dynamic of like, I'm following more because they are one of the, like they're the leader of the conversation in our group now, kind of thing. So there's like, yeah.
Think or to feel or to whatever. Do you think that's right?
Please don't skip us, because if you skip us, you deny
don't skip. You can't skip it.
Don't skip it.
I mean, when you use it like that, again, if we're talking
we're
about
busy with other victims right now, but
yes.
humans.
Well, do you think in general might justifies right? Like, do you think that because we're smarter, because we're stronger, because we have a higher capacity, do you think that somehow justifies us harming or taking the rights away from other individuals?
I feel like we have the opposite issue. where I do not display confidence in outreach. I have a very hard time because when I do, it goes into debate freaking fast. And so I kind of tend to like subconsciously, nervously go the entirely different direction where I'm actually not being confident enough with them. And I'm kind of like too smiley and stuff. But I think you're very, very confident. I think I'm not sure. I don't think, like, I feel like it works very well with them right now. And I wonder if it works all the time, the same with all types of people. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it really depends because, like, yeah, I am very like firm and assertive when I'm like asking questions or when I'm delivering things, which it just depends on the person. That's the thing, is like, you know, it's hard to say because like these guys, they honestly seem like, well, at least the main guy who's engaging, he does seem very like unsure about it, right? So he seems unsure even when he's giving these rebuttals. He seems unsure. So I think the confidence for somebody who's unsure is helpful because it allows them to, I don't know, in a way it's like I am appealing to like I'm building myself up as some kind of authority almost with somebody who's like unsure. But when people who are very defensive or very like sure of themselves or their position, then yeah, it's just, we're just gonna butt heads. Like it gets really ugly really quick because I am trying to be assertive about what I'm asking, what I'm saying. They're trying to be assertive about not engaging or about what they're trying to get across. And one of us has got to give, right? If one of us doesn't give, we just end up butting heads. And yeah, that's I think for those people, you do much better. Like I think, or your approach where you almost let them be assertive, but then you ask them questions and break them down that way. Yeah, and and I think like I think also like obviously I don't think there's a difference, but I think in society, like our gender differences definitely can play a role. Like where I do outreach, like I'm doing outreach a lot of times like outside of bars at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. And I'm like, I am almost always like the assertive person, right? Because I'm a pretty big dude. I speak assertively. So the safety thing is different, and it's just different. I don't know. I feel like unfortunately, I feel like it just ends up how you almost have to do outreach, which again, I disagree with. I think, obviously we're equals, but it's almost like, especially where you said you're in Montana. Yeah. Like, especially like the Southern culture, like I'm speaking for somebody who has family in the South. Southern culture, like women are almost second still. And it's yeah.
That can be helpful. I feel like that can be helpful because it's kind of like the guard is more down. I feel like because it's kind of like, oh, she's because I'm small. So like she's small, she's soft-spoken kind of thing, whatever. So it's not as like, I feel like it's easier for me than a man to actually build rapport. And also when I am angry, it kind of like, it's less, it comes across less as anger just because of the way I am,
Right.
I'm small and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit more of a grace thing. And I also feel like when you have someone who's like butting heads with you, the best approach to me is what I want to do in all conversations almost, but like is when you stay really calm and kind of like calmly confident, but you let them air out their whatever grievances. They look insecure in their position. They do, to the audience especially. And so I think that is extremely powerful. But when you kind of lose it, of course but like it's different when there's like someone who's like and I've also had this experience where I have like a group of guys, 2 or more young guys. It's usually only that type of group that it works with. I don't know why. I think I know why, but like when I actually need to be more dominant than I am with other people, and that's actually how I naturally would be in outreach because I'm angry. So you can be actually much more in a debate and angry sometimes with some of them. like young men, and it's actually it's so much easier because you don't have to just bullshit them that as much, you know, because you have to be careful about how they feel as much, and it's actually important that you are more dominant. And so it's very interesting, the dynamics.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, it's because for me, I feel like because I am a dude and and I'm vegan, right? So like they automatically want, like, other dudes want to be like, I don't want to say dominate me or something, but they want to like show me that I'm like a weak dude, you know, or like something, right? So there ends up being a lot more of like butting heads, especially with other dudes. But yeah, for like these guys, they seem pretty unsure, pretty kind of insecure about the whole thing with their jokes and everything. So for these guys, I think it worked better than it normally does.
But I feel like it's the same for me though. I butt heads more with men.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe for different reasons. Maybe I don't know, but that's interesting.
Maybe
Yeah,
because they feel emasculated, if they feel like they're wrong. Oh, it's so fucking
maybe. Yeah,
confusing.
it's dude. It's so weird. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, there's a reason why our movement is dominated by women mostly. Like there's something with, I don't know if it's probably societal, but also like there's just something about men that like they just don't want to hear it. Like they don't want to change their, I don't know, like they fight it so hard. It's really unfortunate. Yeah, I don't know.
Yep. Anyways, shall we get back?
Yes.
Talking about people, or I guess I don't know where my line is drawn, but I mean, I think like all human life is, you know, even the dumbest of individuals is worth it.
Well, what's the difference? So, like, let me ask, because you brought up intelligence, kind of, right? So, what's the difference between like a 6-month-old baby or someone who's like a mute who's severely mentally challenged, and that of like a cow, a chicken, a pig, right? They're all sentient. They all can experience pain, experience joy, experience the world. They're just in different bodies, right? So, do you really want to discriminate against individuals? They're all individuals just by the body that they're in, the species they're from.
I know that a 6-month-old individual.
I love when there's people waiting in the background listening in. I love it. It's so awesome.
Will experience more than a 35-year-old cow, no matter what.
Well, unless they're a mute and mentally challenged. Because there are. Would you say that there are groups of humans or individual humans who do have a lower intelligence and do have maybe a lower experience or lower quality of experience than that of a dog or of a cow or of a pig?
Sure.
Yeah. And do you think that it would be right to take their rights away, or to harm them or abuse them or put them into your sandwich just because they have a lower level of experience?
No, I don't.
So then where's the symmetry breaker, right? Why, you know? Do you have anything to add? Is that making sense to you?
I personally wouldn't say symmetry breaker, because I feel like when you use like words like that are quite philosophical, well, one, not everybody might know what it means.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Also, like I feel like it makes it a little bit too like I'm always worried that someone would look at the conversation as philosophical, like, "Ooh, that was fun," you know, kind of thing, like that was interesting, you know, instead of like an tangible, like, no, that's not okay. That's why I honestly never say moral or ethical anymore, apart from like if I really need to, because they keep saying it or something like that. But like I say, it's okay or not okay, you know, right or wrong.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, especially earlier on when I was like very focused on debate, I did notice that a lot of people didn't take it, like they didn't understand that what we're talking about actually extends to real life actions, right? Yeah. Like talking about morals and talking about these things, the purpose of it is to impact your decisions. And I do think that people, no matter how much of a contradiction I got them in, or no matter how much like I expose their position as being wrong, they would almost kind of, like you said, almost like treat it like a fun conversation or like a fun game, you know? So I've been trying to add questions, like the one I really like is like, you know, how many more animals do you want to be exploited in your name? You know, and I'd have them give me a number just so like it's like real to them, you know? So like I remind them that they are contributing to this. Like it's not just a conversation, like you are actively doing this and you have the choice to not do it. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a slippery slope with that.
I think something to kind of like remedy that is footage. I think that kind of brings it back to like, you know.
Yeah, I've thought about it. Like, honestly, for me, it's about to be the end of the season because I live in a seasonal area. So pretty much from like December or January to April, it's kind of dead. So I want to do more debates or more conversations where people actually want to talk about it. Like people actually, so that way I can be more debate oriented. Or like I thought about doing this thing where I put up a Craigslist ad. So like me and my brother have talked about this, where I put up a Craigslist ad and I have people from college, right, from college campuses around Boston, who want to talk about veganism. And I just rent like a little studio space or whatever, like a room or whatever. And I could actually do longer conversations with people who actually want to be there. You know what I mean? I feel like that might be interesting. Not just content wise, but also hopefully, you know, to sway them if they are interested enough to follow the ad or to actually show up. So, you know, I'm trying to think about other ways that I could like engage with people in a more like, I don't know, productive way or something, but.
Yeah, and when it comes to so when it comes to footage, why haven't you do you have footage in your outreach?
No, honestly, I've been using my phone as my camera now. So I don't really have a phone to go off of. I could bring a laptop, but I don't know. I find that because of the way that I went vegan, it's just something that I just don't do. I probably could. I probably should, but I just something that I just never, because I don't have like a big screen. I could bring a laptop, but I never
I do
needed.
it on my phone. I know you don't have another phone yet. But.
Yeah. But that's the thing is like I never needed slaughterhouse footage to go vegan. Like I actually didn't watch. What made me vegan was essentially Gary Yourofsky's speech, listening to debates, understanding the argument for animal rights or animal liberation. That's what made me vegan. I never needed to see them actually being harmed. I didn't need the graphic footage, and it is graphic. Like it's horrific. So I get conflicted with actually like going out with a laptop and showing people, and then again, it's like, okay, now we're focusing on what it looks like. Like for example, like heart surgery also looks very graphic. Right? Heart surgery also looks it's hard to look at. That doesn't mean heart surgery is a bad thing. So like the way something looks also doesn't necessarily indicate whether it's morally good or bad. So I like to focus on the moral conversation and, you know, try and appeal to their values more so to their like emotions with the footage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think that's something that's remedied as well. If you actually, because I made I made footage because of like the fact that in the book they talk about like how you know, like talking about the experience of the victim, because it's a book also, especially like the studies on persuasion is based on gay rights, deep canvassing for gay rights, and so people that were coming to the doors were often the victims or people who knew the victims. But like he can kind of get around that by talking about obviously the victims. But I made footage just following one individual cow who's exploited for her breast milk and flesh, and that way following one individual is much easier for people to empathize with than more than one, basically.
Okay.
And, it really like individualizes them, and I am so used to footage because I use it in my editing all the time. But that really was hard for me to watch because of the individualized, like it's not like the objectification of the cow. Basically, it's very it is emotional. But again, like studies, you know, tend to show that people really make this, like you're an outlier. Basically, you know, people tend to make decisions based on how they feel and their emotions, even if they shouldn't, of course. But that's why I think it's really important in outreach. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's really important because most people will be impacted by it.
Okay. Yeah, it's also finding the right footage. Sorry, go ahead.
And also, like, just I think it's important that it's not like a lot of just gory things. I think it's important that it follows one or two individuals, and then at the end you can mention other types of exploitation, so they kind of know that it's not only that we're talking about, but so that they like a lot of the of the footage is not graphic. It's actually just like following the narration of like how their lives go, like the separation between the mother and the baby, things like this. Of course, it's a link to emotion, but we're talking about victims, so it's going to be right. But yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely. I would. I have a lot of downtime, so I would definitely consider that for next season. I mean, it's worth trying, and I think, again, I think in the context, like if I do keep it focused on the moral issues and on the conversation, but then have the footage to also reinforce like what's actually happening in the real world, I think that would be a good combination. So yeah, I agree with you.
And I keep it really short, like mine is 3 minutes, something super short, or even
Yeah.
At some point I had a 1.5 minute video. So
and also it's a good conversation because like a lot of people, when you say, hey, have you seen this? Or hey, can I show you this? They go, no, I can't see it. Or like, no, it'll make me cry or something. That's also like, even if you don't actually show the footage, but like just getting that reaction can be a whole nother opening for trying to understand why they have such a hard time, or so yeah, I agree. I think overall it's just another layer, like another tool, it's just another tool to use. So
yeah.
Chinchilla, and it's a rat, but it's way smarter.
And I feel like also like part of the footage thing that's important to me is that like they always kind of in the conversation they're like, oh, I'm fighting the vegan kind of thing, but really like no, it's recentering it. It's not about us. It's not about pleasing me.
Yeah. You're not fighting against veganism. You're fighting against stopping this. Like this is what you're actively contributing towards. So yeah, no, it's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Than my dogs. So
all right, I'm gonna take that as a no. You have nothing to add. So essentially, veganism, we reject the exploitation of animals, right? So we don't want to use them, abuse them. We don't view them as slaves for humans, right? Because let me ask you this, right? Did you do anything to be born a human?
No.
Right? You essentially just won the lottery, right? You were born into a physical form that just so happens to be the dominant on the planet. You could have easily, I don't know about your religious beliefs, but you could have easily been born a cow, a pig, a chicken, a fish, whatever. So, when we're talking about like discriminating against other species of animals, the logic that you're kind of displaying is very similar to that of someone who would discriminate against race or against sex or against just another group of human, right? So we're just trying to see outside of our own species of human to other species of animals when they share that characteristic of sentience, when they can experience the world just like us or similar to us.
I feel like plants have the same emotions as an animal.
Here we go. So you go back to the plants. Back to the plants.
At this point, I would just say, really? Because that's not
yeah,
serious.
well, because he says, I feel like, and I go, do you feel like, or do you know based off of,
But he wasn't being serious. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Or if he was, it's ridiculous. Because it's like someone basically, like, I think something that can be helpful is, I mean, there's two things I like to bring up, because one is very like just, well, duh, but I haven't thought about that. Like, why would they feel pain evolutionarily? Like, why would they feel pain? They can't move, that can be helpful. But also like, just saying, like, it's like someone is saying it's okay to enslave humans because plants feel pain, because we are all sentient. So it's like, it's what would you say to someone saying that,
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's almost like, it's like a nirvana fallacy almost. They're almost saying like, well, everything can feel pain, or everyone, I guess plants would be everyone now, but everyone can feel pain. So we shouldn't draw the line anywhere. It's like, well, I don't know if that's helpful, like that almost seems much more extreme than what I'm talking about. So yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, and it's just a way to just throw your hands up and not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Know that based on scientific evidence.
I plant plants. I feel like they also are alive, just like
And
animals.
by the way, it's so funny because like I'm one of these people who are like I have a plant, like I care about the plant. I wish I didn't have to eat plants to survive, but I'm not, you know what I mean. But like it's not like I don't understand that someone would be like, oh, I hate that we have to eat living things, even if they might not be sentient, because it's not a super nice thing. But it's like you're talking to me and you're saying that when I'm a little vegan activist, like you're drawing very different conclusions from your care. Like it's like you can't say someone also said something interesting in a way to rebut it, but I think it's kind of a mind fuck, so I don't really use it so much because people don't really get it super easily. But saying that you can't use, if you're saying that plants are sentient and so we shouldn't use them or whatever, you can't, like, you're agreeing that sentience is the trait that means we shouldn't use them, right? Then you can't just let that go when you're talking about other animals then.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I like, and I think people like, because they know that plants are technically living, right? They essentially apply like emotional attachment, which, like, for example, I love my skateboard, right? I would never want somebody to take my skateboard and break it in half, right? But I can also recognize that my skateboard isn't feeling anything, right? They're not an individual. They're just a thing, right? So likewise, like if somebody plants plants, or somebody, like, a lot of people love plants. It's like a thing. I didn't know it was such a thing, but people like love plants and gardening and all these things. So I feel like a lot of people, they take that emotional attachment they have to plants, and then because they're also living, they just make the jump to like, oh, they're individuals, like they make that jump where when it isn't there.
Yep.
Well, so what are we supposed to eat?
So they are alive, but do they have?
What are we supposed to eat? You're talking to a vegan, like it's just putting them. I cannot get over, like, because as someone, I think personally, okay, I think that plants are the best beings on earth because they don't take from anyone to survive. I think they're really, really cool.
Plants are awesome.
Yeah, but like it's just the fact that you put their sentience on the same level as a animal is like, there's no intellectually honest person that would do that, who would actually care about like the justice of, like, they would care about plants. Like they wouldn't care about plants if they don't care about animals. You can't just make that jump. But anyway, sorry, I'm ranting, but
no, you're good.
Any mechanisms in which they could possibly have sentience?
If you don't water them, they get sad, so they definitely have emotions.
But so they don't have a brain. They don't have a central nervous system. So emotions, cognitive thought, all of those things originate in a brain, right? So they are living. I agree with you, right? And similar to like a smartphone, right? You could program a smartphone with AI to be able to respond to things, to get sad, quote unquote. But there's no actual brain, nervous system. There's no actual individual.
I know what you're saying. Having a brain is important.
I mean,
yeah, like this, I just couldn't.
The sound bites here.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, like this guy is clearly like, he's like, not like, he's like, yeah, having a brain's important. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna move back to the other guy, because like clearly this guy is just wasting time.
Yeah.
Being considered morally, yeah.
Considered edible.
Yeah, because like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No.
Go ahead, buddy.
They're getting lazy.
I was gonna say, I think that you give me some things to think about.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Well, what would stop you from going vegan? In terms of from viewing animals as someone and not something, right? Viewing animals as not products for you to consume.
What else am I supposed to eat?
Plants. There's way more edible plants than there are edible animals.
Cashews.
Cashews are vegan.
I got kidney stones from cashews.
Okay, then don't eat cashews.
But they taste good.
Okay, well, that's a choice you got to make. That's your own personal dilemma. What would stop you?
I might be too far down the rabbit hole.
I mean, it is great content. Like, it's very good for, like, in terms of, like, I mean, it's not great content, but it's just, like, it's entertaining in a short, for example. You know what I mean?
No, it's definitely funny. Like, that's the thing is, like, a lot of the interactions we have, they're kind of funny. And they're like, I do see why, like, some of the, even though it's we didn't turn people vegan, it's still like is popular or fun to watch, because it's like some of the things people say are just mind-boggling. I don't understand.
Well, it bodes well for vegans when that's the kind of content you have as well, because like it just makes you look smarter in comparison.
Right. Like I can't imagine somebody, any intelligent person, even if they're not vegan, watching that and being like, oh yeah, no, the non-vegans have great points. Like this is not going to happen.
Yeah, and you can have, short, you can have like this stupid part and then have the really good nugget there that they actually will watch because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, how old are you?
26.
I'm 26.
When did you become vegan?
I became vegan 18 on my 18th birthday.
What?
Not on my 18th birthday. Sorry, after 20.
What's your favorite vegan food?
That's a good question.
I like a good lentil soup. I love lentil soup. I like cereal. I like
Cereal
burgers.
is bad, dude. They put tons of PFAs in them.
Do you have any evidence for that? Because
Yeah.
when we look at the consumption of like fortified cereals, health outcomes are great.
We will skip you. So. Okay.
What's a good cereal?
I eat Life, Quaker Life, very good. High in whole grains,
Do you
fiber.
like raisins?
Do you like raisins? Raisin bran without the honey is good.
Raisin Bran goes hard.
And soy milk, you can drink soy milk. Soy milk has 8 grams of protein.
This is good for rapport,
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I'm trying to answer their questions too. So I try not to just like shut them down. But yeah, it's just, that's the thing, is like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, I think it's not necessarily bad though. Yeah, like the rapport thing. Yeah.
Per cup.
What made you become vegan?
Exactly.
It's always such a great, like, that means that, I mean, I always take it as a very good sign when they ask the question.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
This, right? So once you kind of, I don't want to say open your eyes, but once you understand what we're doing to animals, like the abuse, forget, we're just talking about like,
It's funny.
Take,
we
like-
were talking about this earlier.
we're right now we're talking about like treating animals as products, but once you actually go into how we treat them as products, the abuse, the torture, all of the suffering, forget it, like even just on that basis alone, I could not.
So this
I
came
would feel
out.
hypocritical.
This came off kind of wrong. This is not how I meant it to come off. I was almost saying how like it almost came off as me saying like the torturing of animals is what's like the most like the main reason to go vegan, which is not how I wanted it to come off. I was kind of saying like, if morally it's hard, like even from like philosophically or from like a moral value perspective, it's a hard question to answer. And we're having like a conversation as to why we shouldn't enslave animals. Once you actually see how they're being treated, what happens in these industries, like you mentioned earlier with the footage, once you actually see it, it shouldn't even be a question. Like that's kind of how I wanted it to come off. It ended up not really sounding that way, but I wanted, I was essentially saying like, if it's hard to justify on paper, when you actually see how we enslave them, how we abuse them, how we kill them, it shouldn't even be a question at that point. So that's kind of how I wanted it to come off. I don't think it came off that way though. So that was like a weird wording.
Even if it came up like that, it would come off as animal welfare to most people, I think. Because I know that's not what you mean, because you're talking about the experience of the victims of the slaves, and it always includes them suffering, even if like the oppressor thinks it doesn't, whatever. But like they don't get that, I think, necessarily. So I would think like when you see their slavery, you might get white talk, but also like they might not, because some people are just so fucked they can't. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, so that was a weird wording. I do agree with you. Yeah, I don't think that was necessary for me to say. I think I could have just left it out. But yeah, because I think the reason why is because like we didn't even get into what happens to animals. Like we're just talking like we are talking very like philosophically about like enslaving animals, sentience, all these things. We didn't even talk about any of like the standard practice, which again, standard practices, it's not about, from my perspective, it's not about like improving the standard practices. It's about explaining the reality of what they're paying for, right? The reality of what the victims go through that they fund. So because we didn't really go through any details about what they actually are paying for, that's why I think I felt the need to say something, but I should have just left it. I shouldn't have even put that in there.
I understand this. I think that's why footage is superior to explaining in real life, because when you explain in real life, it really puts the focus on like the practice, even if you're not trying to, instead of the victim's experience of like bondage, which is what you're trying to get across, right? But like if you have
Right.
footage and you go through the life, like, and of course it has to be a specific type of footage. If you are, by the way, guys, looking for that, I have a description, like in the description, I have a Drive folder where I have the footage I made. That's
Oh, you
for an
do? Okay,
individual.
I'll check that out.
Yes.
I haven't checked that out. Okay, cool.
And that way they will see that it's about the slave being enslaved and not about the suffering necessarily, even if there is, of course, always suffering involved to some degree.
Okay. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess like verbally, yeah, it could kind of come off as what's it called? Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I do think that like in the context, I think verbally or like if you look at the footage literally, I don't think it's welfarist, just because we're just trying to explain the reality of what the victims go through, not advocating for like a better farm or a better treatment. But I agree with you. I think footage is just way more impactful, and it's way harder to like mess up like I did. Like trying to explain it verbally, it's a lot easier to like for it to come out wrong or for it to send the wrong message. Whereas with footage, it's kind of black and white. Like this is like there's no way to like misinterpret what they're seeing. Because
I feel like the thing is that we're trying to make them connect to the victims, but when they hear what they are going through and the practices and stuff, they hear, well, we shouldn't do it this way, because they don't want to go vegan, right? So they're all going to the next best thing to them. And so I think that's why it doesn't really work to me to focus on practices as much. Like, I mean, of course, footage will be focused on practices anyways, because it's the freaking like way they are going to be enslaved. But if you make sure that you're talking about how this is not about the how, this is about the fact that they're enslaved or things like that, just
Yeah, I think most people end up bringing up, well, what about local farms? Or, well, what about these? And then from there, you can explain, well, they still go to the same slaughterhouse. They're still enslaved. They're bred into existence, so like still go into like the exploitation part of it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think footage would have been better if I wanted to address the practices or the like what they go through at all. I think footage would be the way to go.
Yeah, it's a very fine line for people to not think we're welfareists, honestly. On the streets like that.
Supporting that, right? I'm against these things, and just all of a sudden for anyone besides another human, I'm not. It seemed hypocritical. So I couldn't answer the question, do I have a justification, right? What's my justification for contributing to these things when I could just eat something else, or when I could just wear something else, or when I could go do something else besides go to a zoo or go to an aquarium or go to a zoo where animals are treated poorly.
Yeah, I said zoo twice. All right, I forgot. All right, give me a break, everybody. Okay.
Yeah. No, this happens all the time for me. I always I always tell myself I'm going to do this, and then I forget everything. And it's much harder to do it than to say it. But and of course, like when saying that where they're treated poorly, I think you might have been trying to get across that zoos are not like necessarily treating them well. But then if you give any weight to that, I think they will be thinking, well, it's about the welfare then, right? Even if it's not what you're talking about.
Yeah. Again, that's not how I wanted to come. I was specifically trying to address other forms of exploitation besides just food,
which is great.
But yeah. So but I shouldn't have added where they were treated poorly.
Well, you'll see when I do my video, you'll have a lot to critique.
All right, we'll see.
That's why, right? I couldn't answer the question.
I think, and this is, we got to get going. So I think this is the last thing I'll say is that you asked the question, well, you made what's the word? Distinguish, whatever. You noticed the difference between intelligence and sentience, right? And you made the example that would I consider somebody who had disabilities, like being a mute, or you listed several, as somebody who was less intelligent? So would I treat them the same way? I think that I think it is an intelligence thing. I think that that's what it comes down to for me. And then when you make an example of a human being who is of less intelligence like that, I think that we kind of just draw a gray line for understanding that though they don't have the same intelligence as somebody else, they are still a human being. So
then it's not intelligence, it's species.
It's species, yeah.
Sure,
So,
but
yeah,
but don't you find it convenient? Like, don't you think that's a little convenient where you go, oh yeah, I just draw the line in my own group? Like, don't you find it a little convenient how like, okay, everyone besides my own group, we can slit their throats, we could put them in the sandwiches, we could wear their skin on our back. Anyone besides the group that I just so happen to be born into. Don't you find don't you see how that logic is eerily similar to a white guy saying, oh, everyone else besides my own group, besides my own white group?
This is awesome. This would be terrible if it was a bad like a dynamic with another person, like that they weren't receptive to it or something. But like I think this is really the good time to be very firm like that in the tone.
It's also eerily similar to every other animal that will attack their own species that are out in the wild, and that will do absolutely anything. I mean,
we'll attack other species.
Will attack their own. I mean, there are animals out there that will attack their own species to get ahead.
Well, we attack for wars and stuff, but I'm
talking about purely for sustenance. Not that cannibalism in species is common, but if it were to come down to two sharks in the ocean fighting over a salmon to eat, you know what I mean?
But is that honest, dude? Is that like an honest? Like, do you think your position is that of a?
I think I'll die on the hill of survival of the fittest, and I think I will draw the line at species.
But when you can survive easily without having to abuse and harm these other animals, what's the justification? Like, I understand if we're on an island.
Yeah, of course, like the harm and abuse, where I think was not the best there, because like they will be, because they could come at you with the crap death stuff, and I think, and also they would not see veganism in the right way.
It's that exploit or enslaver. I think in the context, I just went to I think in the context, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the context of the whole conversation. But yes, I should have just used enslave or exploit or something like that. Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, like I feel like when it's at this point of heated debate, it's kind of impossible to like have a really, I don't know, like I feel like there was something that kind of got lost in I don't know. I feel like I had something that I thought you were going to say or something where it was going to go, and then I kind of forgot where we were because he kind of brought up like it felt like another thing to justify when, I don't know. Let's just see what you.
Island and a cow is the only thing I have to eat. I would still view that action as immoral, but I might do it to save myself, right? But we're not in that position. I mean, we're in Plymouth. I can name you 6 vegan options on that street, down this street. There's plenty of food. There's Stop and Shop, Market Basket. Like to compare yourself to that of a lion who is eating any animal they can get their hands on to survive seems a little dishonest to me. Like, do you think you're in that same position?
No, you're probably right that there are options. I think that this would be a good thing to teach people from a lot younger age than somebody, and not just, like I said, I'm too far gone. I think that this is a good,
But how do we get there?
I mean, they don't teach nutrition anyways.
That's true. So, but how do we get to a world where animals aren't exploited or treated poorly or viewed as products? How do we get there?
Lobby for it in Congress for it to be public education.
Yeah. That's the way to get it. That's very realistic.
Lobby for change in Congress when 2% of the population is vegan. Yeah, good one.
Okay, but how do we get enough support to lobby in Congress?
That's the best thing he said.
Because like
we're so deep. Like,
this is like a comedy. Like
I know.
It's like a movie. Like, it's insane. It's like he's the friend guy who's there to kind of make it more funny or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta put the work in. Like,
yeah. Well, let's say so. If 2% of the entire world is vegan, I'll tell you right now, we're not going to have any leverage, right? But if 30% of the world is vegan, now we're cooking with fire, right? And it takes individuals like you who are at least of sound mind, right? You guys don't think animals should be treated like shit. You guys don't think animals deserve what we're doing to them. It seems like you guys are kind of stuck on, I like the taste of this. I like the foods I eat. I'm used to it, right? But it takes individuals like you who recognize that it's wrong to change, because otherwise we're never going to get there.
So I probably will eat meat tonight, but keep doing this and it will be in my head the entire time I eat meat.
All right. Well, I will leave you this. How many animals do you want to be abused, bred into existence, and exploited on your behalf going forward? Give me a number. 0 or 0. Okay. But every time you purchase that or you eat that piece of flesh, you're eating their flesh. You're literally eating. It's like you took my ass off, like you chop a piece of my ass off, put it on the grill, right? So every time you go to the store, you purchase these products, that's what you're paying for, right? So I'll leave you with that. I'll give you guys a card.
Yeah, you have a channel?
Absolutely. I have a channel. I have there's peer-reviewed studies, there's resources, there's documentaries.
Awesome.
Link in the website. Brandon.
Awesome. Brandon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Thank you guys for stopping.
If you want the perfect tool.
Okay. Awesome. That was very educational.
Yeah, I tried, and but yeah, I definitely, like I said, every interaction, like I left that one being like the one where I brought up the torture thing. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have. I was like, that came off weird. And then what's it called? Some of the verbiage and stuff. I'm always like, oh man, like, but it's hard, you know, you get heated or you're trying to say things, like it's almost like when you try and say things so well, you end up like glitching almost. So yeah, it's always tough, but I'm hoping that guy at least, I mean, you know, it's hard to say. I don't think he'll be vegan, but you know, maybe with a couple more interactions, you never know.
It's always like that. I think it's about like just exposure, and then I gotta go to the restroom real quick. If you'd like to interact with the chat, if you're able to see it.
Absolutely. I have it right. Yeah, I have it right here.
Awesome. Be right back.
All right, cool. Hello, everybody. Hopefully that breakdown of my activism was informative, interesting, entertaining for you. I know that there are a lot of you in the chat that have critiqued me as well, but that's all right. Hello, Ali, if you're still here. Yes. Hello, Ali. Let me see if there were any questions or any. Going back here a little bit. MS says it functions as welfarism in the name of abolition. Footage should never be thought of as, quote, footage of suffering, unquote, but footage of exploitation. Yeah, I guess. I mean, you could word it that way. It depends what footage you're showing, obviously. Like Lucy said, if it's footage of like the enslavement process, you know, like the artificial breeding, the separating of calves from mothers, stuff like that, then yeah, I guess that would be more exploitation oriented. Obviously, if you're showing footage of like workers beating animals, that's going to be more of like, you know, of like shock footage, maybe. Not that it doesn't happen often in the industry, but you know. Vegan Animal Defender 269 says you could address the questions or points, but we need to immediately always say that veganism is not a diet. Yeah, I did. I mean, verbally, yes, I definitely could have said, you know, just so you know, veganism is not a diet. I did define veganism as not a diet, and then I also kept bringing up other forms of exploitation, like the skin on the backs and the zoos and stuff. But yeah, I guess verbally, it's good to reinforce that. I agree. All right, Lucy's back. Hello.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. So this is an unlisted video. So yeah, we'll have to, you know, I really want you to react to this one because I have another one here, but it wasn't very challenging. And I think this one is much more debatey, and I think I could have more interesting feedback from you there. And
okay, I'm interested.
wondering.
Have I seen? Could I have seen? Have you posted this or no?
No, it's unlisted.
Oh, okay, cool,
It's,
cool. All right, cool.
a recent one. Yeah, I'm still going through like my videos from like August, and so
Wow, that's
yeah.
see, I ran out of videos really because I was posting like I think at some point like 2 or 3 times a week, which I should not have done.
Mhm.
I ran out of videos like way too quickly. It was a mistake. But so yeah, it's good that you have stuff.
All right.
Am I supposed to answer the question?
No, I'm asking you questions.
Okay.
I'm interested in what people think about veganism.
About
Veganism?
veganism?
Yeah, would you like to talk about it? Like, oh, by the way, this is a kind of a method based on deep canvassing. So, like, it's based like a lot of things are based from the book and the studies in this book, and it's a little weird and it's not very perfected. So, we'll see. Have some questions? Awesome. So, what's your name?
Nathan.
Nice to meet you. I'm Lucy. Thanks for stopping by. This is recorded, if that's okay with you. Yeah, awesome. So, yeah.
Pause for
So,
a second.
to
I'm just
start,
gonna
I would
tell
like.
you right now, anyone who's
Yes.
ever stopped with a bike like that is bad news. I've never had a good interaction with some guy who stops with a bike. Like, I know it's like just coincidental, but I swear to God, anyone with a bike, they're just like it's always tough. So I already
Well, they're
have
kind
a
of
feeling.
on their way already, kind of thing. They're like, yeah, it's no, I can see that. It's kind of like the vibe is they're more on the go or something, but whatever.
Mhm.
Let's see. I'd like to show you a short video to kind of be on the same page. If you're,
How long will it take?
it's like 3 minutes,
Sure.
and you can stop at any time.
Okay.
Oh yeah, actually, I have timestamps to make sure. Okay, cool. Okay. Very much appreciate you watching the whole thing.
Okay,
Alright,
so you
so-
started with showing him footage.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. That's very I never thought about starting with the footage. That's interesting. Okay. So did you show him
I never get to it. They never watch if we get into some type of like arguments.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, at least you get that's actually interesting because you kind of prime them.
Mhm.
Like you almost like show them what's happening so
Yeah.
they're thinking, their emotions are kind of being appealed to, and then you have a conversation. That's a great point. That's very interesting. I might try that. Honestly, that's
I used to not do that. I used to do like the scale because I use a scale, whatever you'll see before. But like debug your brain, I asked him because he does that and he always gets people. I mean, most of the time people do watch his footage,
Mhm.
and he said, "No, just do it first because otherwise I will not watch it."
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, a lot of like if you think about like a Anonymous for the Voiceless, a lot of like groups, they always start off with the footage, which makes sense because then it gets the conversation rolling instead of trying to like have a conversation without that. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna show you a scale and ask you where you stand on it. So when I mean veganism, I mean the stance against the use of other animals by humans. And on this scale of 0 to 10, where do you stand on humans should go vegan?
I don't agree with the nature of the scale that you're giving me here.
Oh, why?
I mean, so what it looked like that video was describing was factory farming, which I'm
Straight away, defensive as hell.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
never got that. Never, ever.
and that's the thing is like that's also the slippery slope. Like with the footage or with like verbally is like they immediately think, oh, I feel like this is just how it shouldn't be done, not like the ideal way of doing it. Which obviously I'm sure you're going to address or like we can address, but I feel like that's their go-to because you can't deny the footage was horrific. Like no one's going to watch that footage and be like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like this is normal. This is cool.
Yeah, but the footage was not from a factory farm.
Oh, interesting. What was the footage from? Was it from like a dairy?
there was from Dominion, but it was like small farm stuff. It wasn't
like a local dairy farm or
Yeah.
something like that? Yeah.
It wasn't crazy. It was like the only crazy footage was graphic was the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and I think that really tells us about what people think about farming. Like they think that if something looks bad or something looks exploitative or abusive, whatever word you want to use, they automatically go to, oh, this must be the worst kind of farming, right? Yeah. They think that like there's a farm that exists where everything looks clean and nice and none of the animals have the babies taken away and they're not artificially impregnated. Like they think that none of these things happen in
It's a
like
sanctuary. Like
yeah.
there, you know.
Exactly. People think like their ideal farm exists as like a sanctuary almost, where we just, it's a great point.
I can't find my scale, but I'll try to find it so I can show you guys what it looks like. It was like like the standard common practices, basically.
Of factory farms, yeah.
No, even small farmers operate this way.
What do you think about hunting?
It's not vegan. I don't like it. I mean, I'm against it.
Okay. So you're saying that just about being vegan in general at all?
I wouldn't say I don't like it anymore. I was nervous because you came at me like so strong. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and also he's not focusing on. He's really jumping from thing to thing. Like he says factory farming, and you're like, no, this isn't factory farming. He goes, okay, what about hunting? Like he's not even taking the time to say he's against any of the things you're showing him or you're talking about. He's trying to find like what's acceptable, kind of, which is a weird. I don't know why people do that. They like jump.
He got super triggered, I guess. But like this is the scale I use. It's what they use in deep canvassing, and the reason why they tell you to use it, and it's apparently important that you use it in deep canvassing, is that it makes people feel less defensive when they're presenting like where they stand, and also you can track the progress of the conversation. And usually they will go for me, they will go like from 5, meaning like midpoint, like whatever, and then 10 humans should go vegan, or 9 they should go vegan. But sometimes they just, I mean, also they will just stay at 5, and then you will see basically what I did at the end, because I'm just spoiling a little bit.
So what did you ask? What question did you ask him in regards to the scale? I missed that, I think. Did you ask him, do you think you should be vegan? Or?
Yes. So on basically like, should humans go vegan? And I explained what veganism was.
And then you do it again at the end? Is that what you do?
Yes, and after that, I actually asked him, if you were in their position and you were blah, 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 exploited, whatever, enslaved, where would you want me, your oppressor, to stand on this thing? And then they have to say 10.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
You said about being vegan in general at all, not just about factory farming practices or versus hunting or dairy or chickens for eggs or anything like that, just veganism in general. Disagree is what would be
completely
0.
You stand at 0?
Yeah.
Okay, why is that?
I think there are responsible ways to use animals. I also think that, do you know what these teeth that we have, you know what they're for?
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus.
I haven't had that in a while.
Oh my dude. And he's such a, do you know why? I don't know if maybe something about cyclists. They're like such smug, like a-holes, man. Like he's
a cyclist.
Oh, well, sorry, Lucy, but there's something about him that's just he's so pretentious already. Like he's so like condescending. Like, have you, and I don't know if it's like it's almost like he's talking down to you. I don't know if it's a gender thing or what, because I've like, he's just such a, like, I don't know how you feel about profanity, but but he's so like, he's almost like mansplaining. And I hate the way he's doing it. Like, I hate that he's so pretentious about it. The teeth. He was like, you see these? Like, I hate that, man. Oh, it gets me going. Oh my God, I would have lost it, dude. So good on you, at least.
Well, inside I'm always burning with anger, but you know, like, it's something that's cool about this conversation is that I have plenty of conversations like this that I felt really bad about my performance, but this one I'm pretty proud of it, so, for what it was. So we'll see if I still feel this way now after all these weeks. But
yeah, we'll see. You're doing great so far, at least with handling his. You haven't really said too much yet, so it's mostly been him. So
yeah, I'm trying to not like go to his level of heated.
Yeah, you can't jump the gun. Yeah, exactly.
Going through fruits like apples, for example?
No, that's not what they're for.
Okay.
Do you actually know what they're for, or are you just saying apples? Do you know?
No, I'm saying what I think they're for.
Okay, they're called canines.
I know it.
Okay.
Okay.
So you know what they're for.
I couldn't stop laughing at this one. It was just so ridiculous. But
right? What are they for?
Yes, but does that mean that you have a concern for health on an animal-free diet?
Mm-hmm. I believe in that animals should have health, 100%. I don't believe animals should be treated poorly. I hate factory farming. I try whenever I can to get produce, meat, animals sourced from places that are responsible. I have no problem with hunting. I would rather any animal that I would rather have live in the wild and then have a responsible hunter try to quickly take its life, rather having it be raised in a factory farm in those conditions that you said. I have no problem with hunting whatsoever. I have no problem, again, with responsible dairy farming. I have no problem with chickens for eggs. My mother used to have chickens. I had chickens. They lived a good life. We took care of them really well. They laid eggs naturally. We didn't induce them to lay eggs in any way. It was a symbiotic relationship. We fed them, we housed them, we took care of them, and they gave us eggs. I don't see any problem with that. And again, the teeth, like I said.
I almost feel like, and again, I appreciate that you want to give him the chance to speak and like have some rapport, but I almost feel like you almost let him ramble too much, because he went through like, he's going on the fact that he's like, my mother had eggs and she like, it's almost like he's going through like 6 different points, and it's a lot harder to like backtrack and try and like address it. So I'm curious to see where you're going to go, but personally, and again, I'm curious to see where you're going to go, but I would have asked him like, because this is what I try and do at the beginning of my talks. He drew a line, right? He said, I'm against factory farming. Like he is against factory farming, but he's hunting and, responsible dairy, whatever the fuck that means. But he drew a line at factory farming. So I would have asked him, why are you against factory farming? Like trying to get him to say why he's against it, right? Because if he can connect that animals are individuals, right? Animals can feel they are they're subjects. Then from there, extending his hatred for factory farming to, murder or to enslavement or to whatever other practice he's talking about or whatever other thing he's talking about, should be easier. But yeah, I think his rambling, I get it. But like, I would have cut him off. I would have been like, wait a second, hold on. Let's start with one thing at a time. Cause I think he felt that like, you're being nice, and he's kind of like taking your kindness for weakness. I think he's like kind of steamrolling you, which, he's such an asshole, but that's besides the point. So yeah.
Okay. The reason why I didn't cut him off was because I felt like it was the same point. And so when someone rambles on the same point of welfareism, I'm like, okay, just ramble on. I know where we are.
Got it. So you're kind of, you're kind of grouping everything he's saying as just welfareism, and then you're going to address welfareism as a whole, right? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, interesting, cool.
And with the it's interesting because he was talking about biology. So to me, it meant like, well, you think our bodies are designed for animal enslavement. You know what I mean? Like we need their flesh or our secretions.
I noticed that he misunderstood your question.
Yeah, that was
because
strange to me.
You thought he was asking about like, he was making a point about how like we need to eat animals.
Yeah.
And so when you said, oh, are you worried about the health on an animal-free diet? He said, I am worried about the health of the animals, which is like so interesting. Yeah.
Hold on.
Said it's in our nature to eat meat. And you can make the argument that we've like evolved so far in that we no longer need to eat meat because we're so smart, or we've developed ways to.
But like, see, this is what happens sometimes when you let them talk. They debunk their own things on their own because they have the space to do so. And it's very strange. And I've had that happen, but like, it usually doesn't happen so much with someone so heated, but he did.
Have other alternate sources of protein or whatever it is. I just don't believe that. I like to live in symbiosis with the earth in a weird kind of way, where it is a circle of life where we do eat meat. We're meant to eat meat. All the other animals, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, our closest relatives, they do eat meat. And they're much more harsh about it than we are in a lot of ways. They'll catch an
Then I should have stopped him because yes, it was too many things at once.
Yeah, because now he went from welfareism to biology, right? Now he went to we're meant to eat meat. So now it's like, I'm convinced.
The predators.
Yeah, someone like him, I'm convinced you could hold the mic there and he'll just ramble. Like he'll be having a debate with himself. Like he'll just be rambling the whole day.
Which is not necessarily the worst thing, because I've had debates literally like it was debate. It went to the point of debate, and it was actually really good conversations where the guy was similarly heated, but not as crazy, and he got all bothered with the slavery comparison. And I explained why, and then he shut up. And then at the end, I asked him like, where he stood on the scale, and he said where he would be on, where he would want me to be on the scale if he was the victim, and he said, I would want you to be at a 5.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and I was like, really? You're like, like, this is ridiculous, right? And he was like, yeah. So then they know, like, but it's not necessarily bad because you have the content, and it might stay in their head because,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
humiliating.
that's the thing is like like there's so many times where like even in my own relationship, right? Like in my marriage, I will say things that are bullshit, right? Or we'll say something that's like a bullshit excuse or whatever. And then when we have time to sit with it by ourselves, or when we're thinking about it, hours later, days later, I'll go back and say, you know what? I'm sorry. That was ridiculous. I shouldn't have said that or whatever. So like in the moment, yeah, he's going to say all types of, lie. He's going to lie. He's going to make excuses. But later on, when he's actually having a conversation, hopefully, if he's a reflective person, when he's actually having a conversation with himself, he might go, wait a second, I was actually, BSing. That actually is a silly reason.
Or the sleeper effect will come in. When he has enough conversations, the sleeper effect, like the exposure of it, will just.
I've never heard about this
as well.
Yeah, I've never heard
You should
sleeper
look
effect.
it up because it's very nice. It's a psychological effect that basically has been proven to be a thing, and it's when an idea is you're being exposed to an idea, but because of the fact that you don't vibe with the person telling you about it, whatever, you dismiss it. It's dismissed, but it has to, it's a good idea that is that holds to scrutiny, and then when you get more exposure to that idea, because like you've had that conversation earlier, you're actually more likely to agree with it. But you don't think it's because of that previous conversation because you didn't like the person or something like that. So it still helped you. It's basically percentages or whatever. Like it helps you push.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's like music. Like I had a friend in middle school who told me to listen to a certain band, and I just wasn't like I listened to like a song and I'm like, no, I don't like it, right? Because I didn't discover them or whatever. So now, literally like 10 years later, right? 10 years later, I'm like, I texted them and I'm like, hey, dude, this band's actually awesome. Like, so like with enough exposure and enough, like I always remember that they like this band. So now when I listen to it as an adult, like later on, I go, wait a second, this is actually, so yeah, it's interesting. Like people like to gatekeep their own ideas almost. Like they don't like to admit, or they don't like to be shown things. They want to come to the conclusion on their own.
And they do. They usually just only do that, but like that's good. We want them to think it's their idea. We want them to
right,
like,
exactly.
Animal like a monkey. Chimpanzees will hunt monkeys and they'll tear them apart while they're still alive. Similar to what
I'm pretty confident that I addressed everything, so that's that at least.
you showed in that video. I don't think we should do that. There's much more responsible ways to slaughter animals. I think there's some terrible factory farm abattoirs out there. But no, I don't believe in removing ourselves as humans from the food chain that the other animals participate in. I think we should. It makes me feel better, more connected to the earth, more in nature to participate in that food chain. But I'm all for the most responsible ways to do it. I dislike factory farming. I dislike the mistreatment of animals, but I don't want to remove myself.
Wow, he's very much into like very justification, like like no, like he just keeps going over the same points he's made.
Well, you could tell he really doesn't like to be wrong. Like he's really uncomfortable with potentially being wrong. And that's how, because he's trying to steamroll. Like he's trying to steamroll you and come up with every excuse and really like solidify his point so that way he can't feel wrong. It's a very common tactic.
It's very strange because at this point I haven't done.
You've said nothing. You've literally like, you didn't even like, it's not like you even like push him on anything. He's just kind of like conflicting with himself, which like you said, is kind of a good sign in a way, but.
Yeah. And you can tell this is not the first time he's been exposed to the vegan message because he's already super fucking triggered and everything. It's not like, oh, this is a new idea. This is something he has to defend himself from now.
For sure, 100%.
entirely from the eating of meat and animal products. That's my thought.
So, all right, can I tell you real quick before we go into what you talked about, because it's very, very good stuff to talk about. Anyways, so the reason why I went vegan in the first place was when I watched, like,
I was confident that I would remember everything, and I think I did. So I was like, at this point, I just have to like stop with the fuck. I'm trying to break the debate and trying to like express like where I'm coming from, kind of thing, because this is actually an important part of deep canvassing. You have to share your own experience, like vulnerable experience.
Honestly,
try to keep it down.
Honestly, I think you made the right decision, and I think it's something that I want to work on, where my go-to is to address every point, right? Which is why I try and stop the ramble, because I actually I want to answer their questions and address their concerns or their perspective. But after his whole ramble, if you were to go one by one, or if you were to try and address his points, not only would you maybe forget or would you mess it up, but he doesn't care. Right? He just had a whole ramble by himself. He doesn't give a shit, right? So I think that you changed, you kind of not even humoring what he said and going a different route, I do think may pay off. Again, I haven't seen the video, but I do think it will, it may have been, especially with somebody like this, somebody who is so defensive and so insistent on what they have to say, it may have actually been a better route. So I think that's interesting. I think that was a good move.
And it just it reminds me the last live I had with another activist to do this. It was with Ben, and he actually is doing AV, and his style is he will ask all of the objections they have to be vegan, and then he'll address all of them by saying, if you were in their position, would that matter?
Right.
And I like that, but I also feel like I'm very confused about when to really address something when they really have a concern that it would actually be possible. But when you think about it, maybe that it's never really honest, because there's so many vegans out now that they should know that it's possible to be healthy on a vegan diet. But I don't know, maybe not. But so I feel like I think probably doing that, kind of addressing all of them in a sweeping motion, being if you were the victim, where would that matter, to you? All these justifications are better worded. And then if they bring it up again because they're really concerned about something, then you could say whatever it is, I understand, but blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that's a great question to ask. Okay, you just said this whole ramble, but if you were the victim, would any of that matter? I think that's an interesting thing to ask. Yeah.
Or what would you want you to do about it if you were the victim? Because it's not only that it's not really that it doesn't matter, because it matters to figure out how to be healthy, right? But when we're saying what would you want you to do about it? But just do some fucking research about it.
Yeah.
You're what was happening to them. There was a feeling of horror and powerlessness, and then I kind of it just struck me in the moment. This is very interesting, because usually when I say these things, people check out and they'll look around, and I think it's because they get uncomfortable, but it feels very rude. Usually it's I'm telling you something super strong of my own moment I went vegan, and you're literally ignoring me when I listen to you, but okay. And he didn't do that. He did not do that. He listened to me, which is interesting.
It's interesting. Again, it's hard to know if he's genuinely interested or if he's just he seems like someone who's ready to pounce. He stopped ready to pounce on you. And it's hard to know what's going to get through to them. Would a harsher debate style work better with him versus the way that you're going, or is your way going to pay off? It's always a coin toss. You just never know what's going to work. But I think if the message is good and you are out there trying, I mean, it's going to impact positively in one way or another,
Yeah. Great. I just saw them as the individuals that they are. And it became clear to me the parallel between human discrimination and what's going on with them. The reason why I'm saying all these I statements is not because I don't think they're absolute, because I do, but it's because it's much harder for them to come at me when it's literally I'm talking about my own experience, but I'm still making the point. Because I'm saying I saw them as the individuals that they are, not oh, I saw that they were individuals. No, it's objective, but I saw it.
Right. Well, you're not preaching at him. You're talking about your own experience, which a lot of people, most people they can't get defensive about that because you're talking very subjectively, which is good.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's subjective because I saw the individuals that they are. I saw the parallels between the discriminations that humans went through and what they are going through the animals. So it's like it's subjective, just to protect the conversation, the rapport, and then there's still objective. You know, like it's. I'm pretty happy about that.
No, it's very cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Like sexism, xenophobia, things like this, and it's just like and then I felt empowered that I could actually do something for them and be vegan. So you said something that was very interesting. You know, like
that's actually a great point. Pause for a second. I might try that because like if you saw in the last one, I said kind of the same thing about how the logic is similar to that of a racist or a sexist or homophobe, whatever. But I was saying it in general terms, you know, so I'm saying it like a teacher would say it, whereas you are saying it, you're still saying the same point, but you're saying like, I saw it this way, or I, you know, connected the pieces. So that way they can't really, it doesn't feel like it doesn't make them feel like they're less educated. It makes them feel like they're listening to somebody's own experience, which is really good. I think that it's hard for me because I love teaching. Like I love educating and I love it's hard for me to care about their perspective, but I think from a communication, but I think from a communication standpoint, I think that's very good. That's very good. Now that I think about it, that's really good.
Yeah, I agree, David. I shouldn't say veganism for like I could be doing something for them. Yes, yeah, it's like I just didn't word that well. I don't know how to phrase that very much. Like I could take a stance.
Yeah, you could actively be against the exploitation of animals or something. Yeah.
Shouldn't be mistreated. Obviously agree.
I think most people do. Probably 100% of people agree. And it's unfortunate that the meat that we get from the supermarket, the animals are mistreated when you go.
No, but do you see how like it went from here to like we connected on the fact that it's wrong to mistreat animals?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. It worked for now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the good. Like the goal is like to meet them where they are and then try and expand their values or expand their way of thinking, right? Because if you don't have some kind of common ground, it's just never going to work. Like you're never going to get them from where they are to where you want them to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's all things that are like psychologically proven, like for persuasion, you need them to see you as similar, not other. Mm-hmm. And also, sharing your own experiences is very important aspect of it, apparently. So
yeah,
to the supermarket, the meat that you find there, chickens, beef, whatever it would be, they are mistreated in factory farms.
Right. And so, you know, okay, I'm going to throw you a challenging question. Right? So in times of shadow slavery, they were welfare.
I'm especially babying this man because my God, his shame levels are crazy, like insane. Like he's really not handling shame well. And most people, like, they are not as freaking defensive, but like I still do that. I still do the same thing, like, because that way it's like a stupid thing that like you just say, oh, I'm going to throw you a challenging thing. They're really readying their minds, and that way you're not going to have as much of a defensive thing.
And you're almost making it fun. Like you're like giggling and you're like, I'm going to throw you a curveball, you know, like, and it's like for somebody like this who's so aggressive and so defensive, it kind of, and plus you follow that, you preface this with your like the I statement. So you really, I think you did a great job like diffusing the situation for sure.
It's got to go up again.
Okay. I'm excited.
As an abolitionist, the welfarists thought that it was okay to continue slavery if we treated the slaves pleasantly and they didn't suffer too much. What do you think about that?
Is this a bit too fast, maybe?
Yeah, maybe 1.2.
I think there is definitely a difference between animals and human beings. I don't know if there's much more to say about that.
What is the difference that you're thinking about?
I think it's rather self-evident. I don't think I need to explain too much of the difference.
Dude, like, first off, he didn't answer your question. So this is why, like, some level of, like, some debate skill is really important. because I'm not saying you don't have any. I'm just for people watching, because if you ask a question, you said, what do you think about welfareists in the time of slavery, right? He didn't answer the question. He said, I think animals and humans are
Usually
different.
they never do.
Right. But that's
They
the
never
thing
do
is
that
like,
often.
from there, I'd say, wait, hold on a second. I'm just talking about humans. What do you think about welfareists in the time of slavery? And getting him to answer that question is going to make the next part where you're trying to connect it to so much easier. So like that, the ability to like hold people accountable for not answering questions is really important, because this guy just jumped 5 moves ahead and is trying to address the point that you're trying to get to. But it kind of, that's a tough one.
Hold on, I'm taking notes.
No problem.
But to me also, yes, I agree, and at the same time, I feel like he answered it by not answering, because he's like he answered it by saying,
no, it's like to use his words, it's self-evident what he thinks. Like he answered the question without actually, like we know what he thinks because he didn't answer the question.
Chicken and human being. I think it's rather self-evident.
I'm talking more about like what is the difference between humans and other animals that makes it okay to enslave other animals or use their bodies, etc., but not humans.
I don't think it's okay to enslave other animals, I suppose. Do you think my mother owning chickens and us feeding the chickens and housing the chickens and getting the eggs from the chickens, do you think that's enslaving those chickens?
Well, I think it's owning them as property, right? Which is a definition, one of the definitions. And of course, there's definitely a case to be made about rescuing other animals, of course, when they need a home because we've made them so dependent on us. But like something that's really cool to know is that in sanctuaries like that have rescued these animals from places of exploitation, what they do for the chickens is that they give them a pill basically to regulate the eggs they produce, because they have been bred to overproduce eggs like crazy, and like now it's all chickens, and so basically they lose so many nutrients that they end up breaking their bones just because of not having the capacity to just keep them inside them. So that's why I would be against it. And also the concern I have is really the root cause that veganism is trying to address, which is seeing other animals as resources and objects and slaves, basically.
That's great. That's a great point.
Because that really is where all the problems we see with them, that's where they come from.
Do you think that the other animals in the animal kingdom on Earth, do you think they view other animals the same way?
See, we're coming back. I knew this guy was a circle person.
Yeah, like he's not willing to engage or reflect on the questions you're asking or the things you're saying, right? Because I think you're doing a great job. Genuinely, like I think you're making great points when it comes to addressing the welfarism, addressing, again, my only critique here is like, and again, it's hard because he's so dominant, like as a person, but my critique would be like pushing him to answer your questions or maybe preventing some of the ramble, stuff like that. Yeah. But other than that, he's just really avoiding engaging because he doesn't want to, right? Because as soon as he engages, he's going to see how silly he sounds. He doesn't want to engage. He just wants to jump from one thing to the next to the next.
I think I do that. I think I do that. Like I get more like head buddy with him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I was really trying to keep like the levels as low as possible so that there could be something that could get through. Because like, I just feel like he answered, like he answered by basically like it's so evident that it's not okay, that it's like, well, yeah, but yes, but he didn't say the yes because it's so evident. So I didn't even like, you know what I mean? But I think I'm pretty sure I come back to that several times anyways. So you might be right. I'm not sure. I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, of course. Like I totally understand this thing.
So smart that. See, I guess what you're saying is, what is the difference between us and other animals? I don't think there's much of a difference between us and other animals. I think we're part of the animal kingdom, not separate from it. And I think we use other animals in a similar way that other animals use other animals, but I think we're actually much more humane about it in many ways. Again, I don't appreciate the factory farming industry, but other animals use other animals. They don't care about them at all. And the video showed, factory farms, human beings seem to not care about those animals. But I think there are ways to use animals in a symbiotic relationship between human beings and, say, chickens that is beneficial for both of us and is not cruel. The chickens, have you ever owned chickens?
Yes, my parents.
Okay. The chickens, who do you think's meaner to the other chickens? The owners of the human beings or the other chickens?
I don't know. I was little.
Have you ever seen...
the pecking order? Are you talking about the pecking order?
Seen chickens kill other chickens?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's pretty brutal, right? They peck their eyes out and everyone gangs up on them and they kill them. So I would say if me and my mother, we have chickens, me and my mother treat the chickens better than the other chickens treat the other chickens. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So I totally understand, like looking at like the rest of the animal kingdom. Totally understand that.
The thing that's really important in deep canvassing is to find like the common ground kind of thing, like the things that you actually, agree with, and the things that make sense, that why they would be confused or have a concern about whatever. And then you address it through your own like experience of finding out about it, because that way, again, you buffer it.
Well, that's the thing, is like, there's no argument that like like how wild animals, the pain and suffering and the deaths that wild animals endure may very well be worse than what a lot of humans do, but that doesn't justify us exploiting other animals, right? So like he's almost saying because other animals have it worse, or because other animals treat other animals worse, that somehow makes it okay for us to do what we want. So it's not
replace the non-human animals with humans in that scenario, and it's very obvious.
Right. Like now instead of the animals having one oppressor, right, or one cause of death or whatever, now they've got a whole nother like oppressor on the, like, why are we, you know what I mean? He's almost saying like, well, if there's one bad thing that happens to animals, it's okay for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bad things that happen to animals.
That I would say is that other animals also eat their own babies, for example. They do horrible things like that, of course, like I think it's horrible. Yeah. And so, like, thank God we don't look at other animals and justify doing that to our own children because they do this, so that's where I would come from when it comes to that. And also, like, okay, everybody does that all the time. I do it myself often, like the fallacies that happens very often. Basically, that's called an appeal to nature fallacy. It's basically like nature is good in and of itself. And so it's okay to do, like, if something is natural, it's good to do or something.
I don't really think that's a fallacy. I think maybe you're using the word incorrectly.
Well, it is called that. It's an appeal to nature fallacy. And it happens all the time. It happens
Pretentious. Oh my God, makes me want to puke, man. Like he's such a, like, as if you don't know, like, oh my God, like just the worst, dude. Like, and I guess this is the only part where I thought like I would try and again, it's hard because you would end up butting heads. So I get the strategy, but I would really try and push him to answer a question. Like I would ask him like, do you think that things that happen in nature are automatically morally justified? Yes. Right. And I would really try and push him to answer that question, because right now you're explaining it to him, which is great. You're doing a great. I mean, your explanation is fantastic, but he's just going to steamroll you. He's like,
that was a mistake. I don't think you should ever say what a fallacy is, apart from if they're really into that stuff or something, or like, I don't know, maybe if it's a debate, but of course I'm trying not to. Yeah, I agree. I should not.
Yeah. And he's like, I think you're using the word incorrect. Like, dude, oh God, that's like, oh my God, that's crazy.
I think I agree with the assessment of using this term fallacy for appeal to nature. It's not a logical fallacy in the way you'd use the word fallacy for other logical fallacies.
100% is a logical.
That's one of them.
Like he has no idea what he's talking about.
What way is it?
But that's good content.
It is. It is good content. Yeah, it is.
The fallacy.
Well, because like we're just deciding that nature is good when really like nature is just what happens outside of humans. But it happens to me all the time.
Why is assuming nature good a fallacy?
Because there's no logic behind it.
That's not really what a fallacy means.
Well, it means it's not logical, yeah.
A fallacy is a contradiction in logic.
Okay, we don't have to talk about this. That's okay. We can go back to
assuming that nature is good is an opinion. It's not a fallacy in that it doesn't involve a contradiction or some sort of
one thing here, just a better way to word it, because I think, in a sense, I think he's able to steamroll, just because like the wording that I would have done is saying like, an appeal to nature fallacy is when you use nature to justify an action, right? So just because something is natural, it means it's automatically okay to do, or it's automatically moral. That I think would have been clearer to him, because I understand what you're saying, right? A logical fallacy is when something isn't logical because there's a contradiction, right? So like if you have a contradiction, you don't have a consistent view. But yes, that would have been the explanation. Just saying that like, he's essentially saying, well, these actions are okay because they're natural, right? And that is literally the appeal to nature fallacy, because you can find instances of things that happen in nature that he would not view as moral.
Explain it afterwards.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yes, because for example, we don't agree that lions eating their own babies is good, right? But that's natural.
I wouldn't say that that's good or bad. It's the way that nature operates. I'm not going to eat my own baby, but who am I to judge what the natural world does? I don't judge it.
Well, would you judge a human doing that?
Would you like to, if a lion is going to eat its own baby, would you like to beat it off of the baby and force it not to eat it?
Probably not, because what would that help? Probably.
So I'm not going to eat my own baby, but the idea that because a lion eats its own baby, that's somehow bad, that we can all agree that that's bad. And if I say that it's fine because it's
he's kind of
natural,
missing the point
fallacy,
a little bit.
That doesn't,
he's taking it as if you're saying that the lion eating their own baby is bad, and it has as completely separate from him, right? I get what you're saying. You're saying that, well, lions do this, so is that justified for you to do because you're using nature as a justification? So I get what you're doing. I think he's kind of missing the point a little bit.
I think it's trying to miss the point.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a whole nother thing.
Doesn't involve any contradiction of logic.
Right. So rape for humans is natural, right?
What is
rape?
So I wouldn't say that that's. Of course, I would not say that rape is somehow good, but I also don't think that we're so smart that we can remove ourselves from the food chain and nature entirely. What sort of future do you envision where we all live in, we all get laboratory meat and we all sort of live in some sort of, I don't understand. I do appreciate nature. That's one of the reasons why I live here, is because I love hiking, backpacking, fishing. I have no problem with hunting. I like feeling connected to nature. I like removing the parts of it that involve suffering. So for example, mistreatment of other animals, of other humans, like you said, rape, infanticide, things like that. I personally would not do any of those things. I believe in removing as much suffering from the world as possible, but I don't believe in removing ourselves from the natural animals completely.
I agree with that. That's the thing. We don't disagree on that. So I would say, something that's interesting is that plants are part of the food chain, right?
Do you know? So you get, what kind of diet do you have?
Animal free. It's vegan, basically.
So
one thing here is on that ramble. I would have asked him why he's against, why he thinks animal abuse is wrong, or why, because he's saying it's almost like he's on autopilot. He's saying things that he knows sounds good, he knows that being against animal cruelty is a good thing, but he's not actually saying why he's against animal cruelty. Right? Because the same reasons why you'd be against animal cruelty, right, is really the same reason why you should be against animal enslavement, animal exploitation. It's the same reasoning, right? It's because they're individuals who can feel, who have a subjective experience. So yeah,
it's a really good way to do it, because it's fast and concise. It's very good. I like that line of
Yeah. So I think that is, he rambled again, and now you're on a totally another topic, which again, that's the only thing I see that you could have held him to.
Grains, legumes, veggies.
Do you think that any animals die in the production of those foods?
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah, I understand the confusion when it comes to that, because a lot of people think that
the farming of
those. Fucking talk.
Yeah, he's also, that's another thing, is he really, that's the thing, dude. He's steamrolling you, and it's such a it shouldn't be up to you to have to assert yourself so much to get him to stop interrupting you. But with somebody like this, you've got to be it's almost like, if you're not firm, yeah, you might butt heads if you're firm, but if you're not firm, he's just never gonna let you talk. That's the thing. But
I don't think he would let me talk if I did that, because I've tried to do that. And I think at this point I'm thinking about the camera, and I'm thinking, well, he's the one getting all fussed and busy. So I think I was trying to look like the more rational one at this point in the content and address it afterwards.
Yeah, or at least the more emotionally stable one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it does matter a lot to people. It should not matter, but psychologically it does.
Those products causes suffering and death of animals. Yes. Okay, so
Let me explain.
what do you say about that?
Yeah, I understand totally where you're going with that, because it's confusing to a lot of people, because people think that veganism is like being against the death and suffering of other animals, but really it's not what it's about. It's about the exploitation of other animals by humans. So
I
yeah.
think it's the animals are being exploited by being killed in factory farms that grow vegetables. You don't call that exploitation, rather?
Well, exploitation meaning using them for your own advantage. When there's accidents in crops, for example, or even pesticides. I'm not saying that I don't want that to improve. Of course I do. But I wouldn't say it's a vegan issue, because we're not using them for our own benefit. They happen to be there and we need food, so we kill them off, which is, it sucks. And I hope that, in the future, hopefully, a vegan future, there would be more likelihood that this would change, because people would care more about other animals. But yeah, I understand why you bring that up.
Okay. Do you think it's possible to eat anything that would provide normal, natural nutrition for a human being that doesn't involve the death, suffering, or exploitation of any other animal?
I answered that. It's
Yeah,
just
no, he's
not listening.
Yeah. And I find that's common, where you address the crop death thing, right? You say, well, that's bad, but it's not a vegan issue, or, well, we impact other animals negatively, but how does that justify enslaving them? Whatever. You address that. And then literally 2 seconds later, they'll go, but animals die for crops too. It's like they have amnesia. I swear to God.
I think it's such a new concept for people that literally it just flies over their head as well. But they also don't listen because they don't care.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, this guy's probably on Facebook. Like, he likes hunting. He's probably on a Facebook hunting Facebook pages and all this stuff where they say all this nonsense. So he's going off of his previous exposure. Right. So you're not trying to get through to him. You're trying to get through all of the biased information that he's already been fed.
Yep.
Animal.
Well, that's different. I think it's not possible to live without causing suffering to others. Okay. But I think it's possible to hold the stance against the exploitation of other animals by humans. Meaning, I can do everything I can to not contribute to exploiting them.
Yeah, I would agree for the most part. I don't want to exploit any other animals. I don't want to cause them to suffer. I don't think raising chickens in your backyard is exploiting animals in a sense that it causes unnatural pain or suffering to other animals.
That's not the same thing, right? I agree, because it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to suffer, right? Yeah, but that's the point. Exploitation does not necessarily mean that it means suffering,
Okay, good.
The problem
that's
is, again,
good. I was going to say, at this point, I think you should explain because I don't think he's understanding what exploitation means.
Yeah.
So, and I think, it's good that you broke it down. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Sylvia Animal Defender says, I disagree with here about how you define exploitation, Lucy. Should had said using for selfish purposes, not using them, because using a feather is not using them, but using what comes from them. Yeah, I agree. Sure.
Well, the only thing I would say is you could technically say wildlife photography is using them for selfish purposes. I think I actually like the way you define exploitation. I think the simplest way to define it to where people get it is just comparing it to slavery, which you do a lot, which I really like. That's why I started talking about slavery more, is because that's as simple as it get. That is the issue, right? Is slavery, the fact that we control the reproduction, we choose what happens to them, how they die, what they're used for, in the form of literally slave. It's almost identical to slavery. So,
and I feel like these are really way more synonymous. At some point we get in our heads a little bit too much. People are not going to receive things exactly as we mean them sometimes. I think that you just have to say it differently sometimes. Exploitation, or using them, or enslaving them, or I like saying using them as slaves, resources, and objects, because I think encompasses everything, really. But yeah.
Yeah, I also, it depends on the context of the conversation too, because you could explain what something is in a few different ways, like you said, and it could mean the same thing, but by using different words, or by using the words that they're familiar with in the conversation, it might resonate more with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or saying oppression, things like that. Yeah.
The root mindset of you're using the chickens' bodies for your own benefit, and in their best interest, really, what would be best for them, and what they need is to be given medication that would stop their overproduction of eggs.
Do you think that they should be given medication?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we made them this way. Yeah.
This way. So we have you think we should provide them some natural substance? So the difference between natural selection and artificial.
He's like trying to make it seem like it's such an abusive thing to do something unnatural to someone and give them medication. Are you kidding me? Don't
Yeah.
you take medication? Like, I mean, it's
Or as if
this is
somehow
the
like,
dumbest fallacy ever to me.
yeah, or as if somehow like allowing genetically modified birds, right? Something that's already unnatural, genetically modified birds who have periods every day, sometimes multiple times a day, to have genetically modified birds just continue living in that pain versus just giving them medication to actually help them. Like that's crazy. That's crazy to me.
Which is why I'm not fighting him, because it's like, well, obviously.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you don't fight someone on something so freaking obvious, it's like it kind of just takes the weight completely off of what they're saying. Is like, well, of course.
Artificial selection. Do you think that medication is a recourse that we should use against the breeding of like chickens, for example? We should give them pills, medications that suppress the animal's natural state, even though if we've been the ones that have bred them that way.
I don't really understand that.
I think that's very strange.
Oh my God. That's just comical. He's like, I don't think that's natural, even though we bred them that way. He's like overlooking the complete unnatural atrocity we've created. He's like, well, you know, I know that we bred them in such an unnatural way, but don't you think it's unnatural that we give them medication?
But also, we've already addressed that natural is not necessarily good. So what are we even talking about?
Right. All of this is literally beside the point.
Yeah, it's great content, though. I'm very grateful to him for that.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
A strange take on it. Even if we have bred the chickens in that way, their body's in that natural state. I don't think you should give them medication to try to alter that once that body is in that state.
We have altered them. This is not something that works for their bodies. It's just like you would give medication to someone who's diabetic, right? Or to a dog who has like some type of disease. You know, for example, like something that's kind of similar is like the pit bulls. I think they're called pit bulls' faces. You know, they can't breathe because they've been bred to like look a certain way.
Bulldogs have.
Yeah, exactly.
Bulldogs, yeah, bulldogs.
I want to ask you real quick, like, do you think that we can be healthy on an animal-free diet?
I think there are ways. I think our natural diet includes meat. The way that the human body has developed, it does include meat. It's not really an opinion. If you're asking me whether it's possible to be healthy without it, there are probably ways to do it. But I think the most natural and healthy diet involves meat as a human being. I have a question for you too. Can I ask you a thought-provoking question? Will you answer?
Can I just say one thing about the health thing before you? Please keep it. Don't forget it. All right. So yes, I just want to say real quick, something that can be really empowering and cool for people to know is that there's like a lot of World Health Organizations, goddammit, like the NHS or like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, there's two of them, and the Academy of Nutrition in Dietetics, a group of nutritionists. Basically, they have found through 117 studies, including meta-analyses, that really an animal-free diet, when it's well planned, like all diets, you know, is suitable for all ages, pregnant women and athletes, and that's something that could be.
An animal-free diet, when planned correctly, you need to take unnatural supplements, oftentimes in order to achieve that.
See, okay. So
you need to.
Yeah, there's a couple. So this is why like pushing him to answer questions and to really acknowledge it, because you explained it.
Yeah.
But unless you get him to acknowledge it, like he's been using the appeal to nature fallacy, like throughout that's pretty much his main justification, right? Oh, well, supplements are unnatural. Oh, well, meat is natural, right? I think at this point, this is the kind of guy that you cannot be nice. Like, this is not like personally. And now again, it may have blown up, whatever, but I think that really asking him questions and being firm on your point would maybe have reached him, or at least made a bigger impact in the video. Because he's just, going back and forth on the same fallacy, even though you guys like addressed it earlier, but it just wasn't, I don't think it wasn't firm enough. Yeah. So that's really like, because you're doing everything right. It's just for this kind of person, the approach, I think, is not that effective.
Yeah. But at this point, it's also like, yes, I agree, I could be firmer, but at the same time, I have said it. Like,
no, you did.
Like, you have admitted that rape isn't, like, it's not good, it's natural. It's like, at some point, it's also like, there will be they will be like that, but I agree, I should have done it. And it's very, as you know, it's very hard to find the line between debate and actually firm rapport, whatever. But I agree, yeah, it's just I feel like however way I would have done it, it would have been a mess.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like this guy, he also seems like he wants to debate. So like he wants to debate. He wants to have that like confrontational push of each other's position, which it would have been a mess. Anyway, he's not ready for it. He's super defensive, but it may have made either a bigger impact on him, because if he feels like you bettered him in debate, right? Because some people, they do respond well to defeat, right? They literally need to because for me, if I am having a conversation with somebody and I feel like I lost that conversation, or I feel like they put me in a position that I feel like I have the worst position, that's what makes me change.
Yeah.
Right. So it just depends. So he seems like somebody who's very aggressive and very like, if you don't show me how I'm wrong, or like, if you don't put me in my place, I'm just going to steamroll you.
No, I think his position is more like, I don't give a shit, I'm going to steamroll you.
Yeah,
Fuck
maybe.
off.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
but yes,
again,
barber.
Yeah, he's maybe a bad example, but otherwise you're right.
Yeah, I've
you
had
address
a conversation
everything
like that. I've had a conversation like what you said, where but I did it. I found a way with that guy to do it in a way that we were debating, but it was playful. And I think that's also a way of doing it, meaning like, are you kidding kind of thing, like something, but there is rapport. It's not like condescending to them or whatever, because I can tell they're bullshit, like they're bullshitting. But yeah, some people respond to that and some don't.
I just want to address a comment here, so just to be clear, I don't think that taking photos of animals is wrong or is immoral or is exploitation. I was used, because the definition you gave was using animals selfishly, right? So if you take photos of animals and you sell those photos, you're not actually like enslaving those animals. You're not like exploiting them to any meaningful degree, but technically you're using them selfishly. So I don't think putting in wildlife photography in the category of animal exploitation makes any sense. I'm just saying, with the verbiage that was provided earlier, not by Lucy, but by the comments of using animals selfishly, technically taking photos of animals and selling those photos or putting them on your website or whatever is a selfish use. It's not to any meaningful degree that I think should ever be considered. I think, like in this case where you say just taking a picture, treat animals as resources, I think that's a better definition, right? Exploitation is benefiting from somebody's work unfairly, or treating somebody as a resource, right? Or as a means of profit or whatever. I think that's a much better definition than just saying all animal use in a selfish manner, or something, whatever was said earlier, if that makes sense.
And I think a great way to know if like what we're talking about is like what we're really talking about, like, is to just replace the animal with a human, because people like photograph humans in the street, literally like as crowds and stuff, and we don't really see that as human exploitation. Of course, we have to be more careful when it comes to other animals, because they already are not protected at all and not like humans, But I do feel like it is helpful anytime we struggle with that.
Yeah. So I just want to address that. Because I think people are thinking that I consider taking photos of animals as like a form of exploitation. I don't. I was just saying, with the definition that was provided earlier, or the term or the definition of exploitation, it seemed like a slippery slope, because technically you can categorize that as that. But anyway.
To take things that are manufactured by human beings to try to replace nutrients that would be achieved through meat, typically, but I think it's possible to be healthy. Yeah, I don't think that you need meat. If you don't have meat, that somehow you're going to be horribly deficient in something. But I do believe that the most natural human diet includes meat. Yeah.
The thing is that these animals are fed B12, for example. That's the only thing that's really hard for vegans to get, like, naturally. Actually, they found plants that have B12 now, and also it was in the unfiltered water systems, and like the unfiltered water, it's made by bacteria in the ground.
It was found in wild animals. It's not something that's just been fed to to factory.
Yes, but the thing is that they get it from the ground because it's secreted by a bacteria, and now they can't really anymore because of what we've done to the ground. So anyways, they get supplemented anyways. But you know, vegans, if they were going like super hardcore natural, they could like get their certain, like they found some plants and some algae that have B12 stuff in it, and also in untreated water. But that's dangerous for other reasons, of course.
You can get B12 vitamins in a supplement. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think if you plan a diet, you can live a normal, healthy life as a vegan. I still believe that the most natural diet includes meat. All the other primates.
I was someone like that, by the way. I was someone who thought natural things were good, and I always had cognitive dissonance about that. And I felt it in my head, and it was uncomfortable because I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I had this thing of like, yeah, nature good, but at the same time, like that doesn't make sense, you know. Like, once I saw that it was an actual fallacy, it relieved me because finally this cognitive dissonance was relieved, you know, like.
Yeah.
And so I understand where he's coming from, but it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. It just doesn't. But yes, I wasn't firm enough for sure there.
That we're most connected to, they all have meat in their diets.
Why does that matter so much?
They're our closest genetic relatives. We share the most in common with them.
Yeah, but why does that matter so much to live naturally?
So I have a question for you then, if you want to answer that. Do you believe in God, or are you an atheist?
I'm an atheist.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah, again, you are here. I was about to say, you're actually trying to push him to answer a question, and he doesn't want to answer.
It doesn't matter what I do.
Right. He wants to dodge. He doesn't. But that's the thing. I would go even firmer. Dude, I would because otherwise he'll keep dodging. And if he doesn't want to answer, then let him go. That's the thing is this is such you put so much energy into this guy who literally did nothing but dodge and ramble. Maybe, like you said, exposure, maybe some exposure is still, might be good for him. But just to say, I do have to get off in 4 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. We kind of, this kind of like the same kind of thing going on, but I'll publish it anyways in the future. So you might see the end there, but basically it's the same thing happens, but I try to be firm, blah, 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 same kind of thing. And at the end, he thanks me for my activism, which is, I find absolutely disgusting and revolting when they do that.
Dude, I hate it.
Yeah, it's so disgusting, but yeah. And he says, and one thing that I think I would not do, and I learned from that conversation at the end as well, is he said, I'm not going to go vegan though. And I said, I know. And I regret saying that because it's like, no, you will go vegan at some point. Once most people are vegan, you're actually going to go vegan because you will succumb to the peer pressure. And besides, I don't want him to be validated on that. That's not I'm like, okay, or that's not good. I just have to just not answer that or something, or we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, I mean, overall, again, I think you, in terms of your language, in terms of the, what you were trying to convey or the message, I think was great. I think you did push him, at certain times on certain questions. I think the biggest issue is the type of person. Obviously, I mean, this guy is even as firm, like you said earlier, how I come off very confident, very firm, very assertive. I would have had a hard time with him, right? He's a very he dodges, he steamrolls. That's just what he does. But yeah, the only critique would be to really try and keep him on task and maybe prevent some rambles, stuff like that. But otherwise, I think it was pretty good.
Well, thank you for the advice. I took notes and stuff because yeah. All right. So guys, we're going to do some questions for a little bit. So Brendan, if it's truly in their interest, why frame it as using them at all? Doesn't use imply treating them as means to an end rather than beings with their own autonomy?
I was talking about photography. So again, right, when I think about exploitation, we're talking about some kind of, there's no way to exploit somebody without having some kind of restriction or some kind of negative impact on them, right? So just how Lucy brought up with street photography, right? I used to do street photography a lot. So I used to take photos of strangers, right? Obviously they're in public. So legally we don't grant strangers the right to privacy in public, because they're in a public space. So I never actually sold any of the photos, but for example, me using somebody's image, right? So me using somebody that I took in a photo as, I don't know, to sell, right? As art or as a portrait or what have you. Technically that is exploitation, right? Technically I am using them for my own selfish reasons, right? I'm not like doing anything in their interest. I'm doing something in my interest, but it's not having any meaningful impact, positive or negative, on their life. Like there's essentially, I am leaving them the same way that I found them, right? So likewise in the animal case, technically, if you're shooting photos of animals and are profiting off of them or are selling photos, you are doing something selfish, right? You are doing something for your own interest, but not every selfish act is necessarily causes a negative impact or actually impacts them at all, right? So if you leave an animal in their wild place, right? You don't put, like David mentioned earlier, or David, you don't take them out of their environment. You don't give them props. You don't, like, if you literally are shooting wildlife photography where you leave them as is, you are doing something selfish, but you're not impacting them in any way whatsoever. So in that case, again, all I'm saying is when you say that,
yeah, they're free. They're free. That's, I think, a very key element. They're free.
Right.
Completely.
Right. So when you say that exploitation is using somebody in a selfish way, I think that verbiage can just be slightly tweaked to make it a little more clearer that like they're like to not include actions like photography or like things where they're not actually being impacted in any meaningful way.
Yeah, or saying using them as slaves, objects, or
yeah, or resources, right? If you want to say using them resources, yeah, I think that's a better definition of exploitation than use in any selfish way. But again, we might agree to disagree, but that's my reasoning.
There's going to be, I think, like areas that are a little bit grayer at the corners, I think, because it's going to happen with any type of ideology, I think. But I don't think that's much of a problem anyways. Yeah, so basically, I guess that's all the questions we have. I basically agree with Brendan on this. Well, because someone asked me, yes, of course, animal exploitation can happen without any impacts, roadkill, dumpster diving. Yes, I agree, I understand, but that would like mean, I feel like it's different when, I'm not exactly sure, I could change my mind on this, but I feel like when you're photographing wildlife, you're not perpetuating the idea that these animals are here to serve you or to be your resources, your objects, your saves. It's literally like, it's like, yeah, I don't have an issue with people taking photos of like of people in the street like you talked about, but I have an issue with people eating dead humans also, because that's a problem. Like it reinforces the mentality, or like using I don't like people using, yeah, I don't want people using feathers that they found on the ground, because that reinforces the idea that other animals are resources for us, for example. But
yeah, I can see in a vacuum. I would probably disagree, but practically, I agree.
Yeah.
I think practically, when we do allow or promote eating roadkill or dumpster diving in the world that we live in, yeah, it's not helping us. If anything, it's again perpetuating the idea that animal flesh should be consumed or something like that. So yeah, I agree. Practically speaking, it's an issue. Yeah. Whereas with wildlife photography, that's not the same thing at all.
I agree. All right, so I just want to say real quick, thank you to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee members, Nick, Hannah, Buckle, Mike, Ian, Zen, Boris, Enrico, Wayne, and Koma. Very much appreciate you guys. If you want to support my activism, feel free to check the description. There's links to it, and that helps me a lot, so thank you. Of course, go subscribe to Brendan if you haven't already. It's in the description, and also you can click on the title. And yeah, thank you so much for all the work you do, Brendan. This is hard work, so very much appreciated. And,
no, thank you for having me on. This is cool. I've never actually broken down my activism with anyone or done anything, so it was cool. I definitely got some good notes and some good lessons, seeing how you word things, and I'm definitely going to try and implement that. I'll probably try some footage or something, so we'll see how that goes. But this is fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for watching. And yeah, hopefully we can collab again in the future.
Yeah, look forward to doing that. Awesome.
Bye, guys. Go vegan, get active, and educate yourself about veganism. See ya.
See you, everybody.